All right, one last look at your traffic and weather from the Wetzel's Automotive Traffic Center. On your Wednesday morning, couple things to report. An accident at Augusta Road and I-20, another one at Emmanuel Church Road and Two Notch. I-20 westbound between Wilson Boulevard and Fairfield, and then one at I-77 southbound and Percival as well. Today's weather, isolated thunderstorms throughout the day, high of 92. Tomorrow, same forecast, high of 90. Traffic and weather, Wetzel's Automotive Traffic Center here on the early game. Nine o'clock on your Wednesday morning. Welcome in. It is the Extra Point here on the game. Tyler Head and Jack Veltri along with you as the countdown gets smaller and smaller. Jack, only 19 more days, man. Only 18 more days. I'm even getting too far ahead of myself here. 18 more days until football finally gets here.
Continuing to get closer and closer. I'm really looking forward to it, man. I'm glad you said 18 and not 19 because we're one day closer now.
Yeah, if doing the math in the middle of the week gets difficult because we're talking about Sunday, not a Saturday. But yes, we do technically have one day longer to wait than most teams that are playing on that opening Saturday. But like I said yesterday, once we actually get to other games happening, then it's practically here. Yeah, the Gamecocks aren't playing until the 31st, but you get me to really week 0. And then that Thursday, the 28th, I guess, would be that day. Then it's locked and loaded for the rest of the weekend and all the way through, Labor Day night when you have TCU and NC State.
No, yeah, it's going to be a jam-packed 2 weeks of football, or I should say really just a week of football with week 0 and then week 1. But really looking forward to it, man. It's around the corner. I think we're about tasting it and looking forward to it. And
you guys, you don't have any more availabilities in terms of going to watch camp before the season starts. Is that correct?
Yeah, so our last one was on Sunday, and we will not be back out there for an open practice until the spring, or, well, if they make a bowl game, then I guess the bowl game or playoff, whatever it might be. But, that was it for us for the fall here.
Well, hopefully once we finally get into the season, we do get to start answering some of those questions that we have. Because, again, as we talk about, when you guys get to go out there, you're watching a lot of special team stuff. Did get to see more on Sunday, but you take everything with a grain of salt because you're not watching all of practice. And then when we hear from people, when we hear from players, again, they're going to spin that as positively as possible. So even if things are going really, really bad, you're not typically going to know that until the season does finally start. So only 18 days away from some questions finally being answered.
Yeah, no, definitely. And again, they had their first scrimmage on Saturday. They'll have another one coming up this Saturday. And then that will really be, I think that's the last scrimmage they have of the fall camp session here. And then, school starts next week, and then the season's going to be here before we know it. And again, like you said, we really are going to learn a lot about this team, especially not under the lights, but it's in a primetime window, national TV. So we're going to learn a lot about this team early on in the year and figure out what they're really about.
We will dive into what Coach Beamer and some of the players did have to say yesterday in just a moment. But it is 9 o'clock, and always we must kick things off with a Sandstorm Pick-Me-Up.
Time to get hyped. Here's your 9 a.m. Sandstorm, sponsored by George Sink Injury Lawyers. Just call all nines.
It is time for your 9 a.m. Sandstorm Pick-Me-Up, brought to you by South Carolina's largest injury law firm, George Sink Injury Lawyers. If you've been hurt in the car or at work, call George Sink now at 803 all nines. Yesterday, Coach Beamer did take to the podium, as we'll get accustomed to seeing him on Tuesdays at 1 o'clock as we go throughout the season. We do have to address, he did stand up for his wife's baking, because apparently the cookies that were presented in episode 5 of Any Given Saturday came under a lot of criticism. And look, unfortunately, in today's world, we've gotten really used to trash talking people through the internet, through DMs, tweets, all those kind of things. And I could very much see Mrs. Beamer getting a flood of messages on Instagram or whatever, people saying he didn't cook those cookies right. Those look underdone, or those are burnt, or whatever. Those look disgusting. Like, did you taste them? Are you in the vicinity of smelling the cookies? How do you really know? So Beamer, whether on his own volition or being encouraged by Emily, did go to bat for her to start the press conference yesterday, which I did like that. That was funny.
Yeah, I can totally respect that. Now, I'm not going to lie, because I'm glad he kind of brought it up, because, like, I remember watching the doc the first time and, not hating here or anything. I'm not criticizing, but the cookies did look, I'm, like, watching them, like, those do not look baked all the way. But I bet you they do taste very good. And, don't judge a book by its cover, as they say.
I will tell you this. I will take an undercooked cookie over an overcooked cookie or overbaked cookie any day. Like, when you get especially like a chocolate chip cookie that's a little underdone to where, like, you have to, like, almost eat it with a fork or a spoon because you can't, like, pick it up because it's so, like, soft and gooey, I'll take that 7 days out of the week.
Oh, easily. So, yeah, no shade there. That was just something I noticed. And then I'm like, oh, well, I guess a lot of people really did not take to the way the cook. I thought that was so funny how people are actually commenting and letting her know, like, hey, your cookies are not looking good. Like, come on.
If you do anything on social media, you're going to get criticized by it. Like if you were to go out there and, post a video of you lifting weights or something like that, you're going to have a flood of people saying you're not doing that right. Your form's bad. You're not lifting with the correct muscle. Like, that's just how we are. So I'm not surprised that the mob came after Mrs. Beamer's cookies from the Netflix series. But according to Coach and everybody in the facility, they apparently are very delicious. And hopefully he takes up John Whittle's offer of bringing them to the next media availability.
Yeah, he better. I would really love to have one of those cookies next week. So
yeah, we'll follow that as that unfolds. But he did have other things to talk about in the press conference yesterday, including what he was most impressed by in the first scrimmage the other day.
Offense didn't turn the ball over. That was good. I look back at my notes from last year. They didn't turn the ball over in that scrimmage last year either. Now, y'all heard me talk about we did in the season some, but that was good to have. I mean, we got, I think, 117 plays in the other night, and the year before that scrimmage was 108, I believe. So we got more plays, and there were no turnovers. Now, there were some plays, some throws where receivers got their hands on the throw and probably should have been an interception, but they weren't able to finish the catch. So that's good. I think when you can go in there and have 117 plays and not turn the ball over, that's a start, because we know how important turnover margin is in college football. And then just seeing young guys make plays. I thought we punted the ball well in there. We did some good things from a special teams standpoint, and then seeing young guys being in the stadium for the first time and handling that environment.
This is where you have kind of two sides of the coin when it comes to something like a scrimmage, because you hear, hey, the offense didn't turn the ball over. Fantastic. Glad the offense isn't putting the ball in harm's way. But on the other side, it's like, well, why isn't the defense generating takeaways? And again, he said last year it was the same situation in the opening scrimmage, and obviously we ended up having a bit of a problem with the offense turning the ball over. They ended up being one of the worst in the SEC at doing that, and the defense once again was towards the top of the SEC in generating takeaways. So it's not necessarily an indication of what's to come. We hope that's the case when it comes to the offense. But is it, for as much as we don't know about this team, is it fair to say this team could truly live and die based off turnovers this year?
I think so. You look at the numbers from last year, and they had a lot of issues with turnovers. They had 14 lost fumbles, which was tied for the second most in the SEC. And you look at the way in which those fumbles came, a lot of them did come from Lenore Sellers, who had 6 lost fumbles throughout the year, and he also threw 7 interceptions. So, yes, I think South Carolina had a bit of a turnover issue last year. The nice part about it, though, was the defense was always able to make sure that nothing really came of it. Like, rarely did anything really happen to where it's like in some cases it could cost South Carolina a game for sure.
Yeah.
Like it definitely did in the Alabama game with some of the turnovers that they had, and no one's disputing that. But I think from last year's standpoint, the defense was so good to where, and they were probably able to go out there and get some turnovers on their own end to give South Carolina the ball back. So you really do hope you can cut down on those this year for sure, because the last thing you want to do is have those same numbers this year and the defense take a little bit of a step back, because it's not going to be a one-to-one comparison of what happened last year.
Well, here's my thing. And for the most part, almost the entire defensive staff has stayed intact since Beamer's been here, going back to 2021. And obviously the personnel on the field has changed quite a bit. And you've sent plenty of guys to the NFL, including the 5 guys that got drafted off that defense from a year ago. But one thing that's been consistent outside of 2023, which was a little bit of a dip because they went through that month of October without generating any takeaways and proceeded to lose all those games. This team is consistently good at forcing turnovers. For whatever the rhyme or reason for that is, I don't know, but it doesn't really matter what personnel is on the field. This coaching staff has a way of developing and coaching them to the point where they are good at taking the ball away. And yeah, some of that is going to fall on the other team, making bad decisions, bad throws, those kind of things. But I'm never overly concerned about this defense's ability to generate takeaways. I am concerned about the offense's ability to hold on to the ball. As you mentioned there, Sellers putting the ball in harm's way. And it's not so much the interceptions, it's the fumbles, right? And with running being such a big part of his game, that's something that I need to see a dramatic improvement in this upcoming season.
No, definitely. And again, that was something that Lenoris has talked about, and Mike Shula has talked about it too. The fact that they need to do a better job of minimizing those fumbles and putting the ball on the ground and stuff. And I think if we can see Lenoris, because I think he had 10 fumbles last year, but again, 6 of them were lost.
Yep.
You cut that number in half down to like 3 or 4. You're feeling a lot better about yourself. Like, imagine if he didn't have some of those fumbles in like the Alabama game, for instance. Like, what happens in that game? Does South Carolina win and get into the playoff? Like, it could be a completely different season if you just minimize some of these mistakes on the field.
Because I think I look at those first 5 games specifically, and we talk about, hey, Carolina has a pathway to going 5-0 to start the season, which, again, that's easier said than done. But despite the fact that I feel like you're more talented than most of those teams you start the season with, if you're giving them short fields, like, hey, Virginia Tech, if you give them two takeaways in plus territory where they're starting drives at the 35 or 40 and don't have long to go to score some points, that's how you can lose a game like that. Again, I feel like if you can hold on to the ball, and look, turnovers are going to happen. Like, you're going to have a fumble here and there. You're going to have an interception off a tip ball or something like that. You're not going to go through the season not turning the ball over. That's just not how football works. But if you can minimize those to as high a possible degree, where, let's say, over the course of the first 5 games, maybe you only turn the ball over 2 and 3 times total, then you're probably sitting pretty. It's
what you do with the mistakes that you make after it happens in the game, right? Again, like I said, if the defense is doing a good job of holding offenses to a 3-and-out, making sure they don't score off those turnovers, you're going to be fine. You can live with it. It's just you got to be able to minimize those mistakes, because you don't want them being as bad or maybe even worse than where they were last year.
Yeah, and again, you had the defense that could clean those kind of things up. Like, all right, not great that you turned the ball over the 50-yard line, but you feel like you have a defense strong enough to keep that team from scoring. Right now, we truly do not know. That's been the consistent thing this entire offseason is we have high hopes. We have expectations of things being good, but we just truly do not know on the defensive side of the football outside of, Dylan Stewart coming off the edge and obviously, guys like Jalen Kilgore, Judge Collier in the back end of the defense. But outside of that, a lot of question marks that we're going to have to see as the season rolls along.
Yeah, no, definitely. But looking forward to seeing how this team's able to answer these questions, and I think they'll do a pretty good job of it.
We'll get into what else was said yesterday, including talking about Oscar Attaway and what he had to say about how he ended last season, which maybe we didn't all fully know quite yet. That's coming up next. It is the Extra Point. It's our head and Jack Feltry with you on your Wednesday on the Game. And welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head, Jack Beltry with you on your Wednesday here on The Game. If you didn't hear us yesterday, I'm excited to remind you that starting on Monday, August the 18th, that's this Monday, you're going to be able to hear us in Charleston. The Game expanding into Charleston on WIWF, which is 96.9 HD3. So you can listen to us here in Columbia, listen to us in Myrtle Beach, Florence, and Charleston as well. And, of course, you can always listen to us on the 107.5 Game app as well as streaming on the Game TV radio. So we're pretty much statewide at that point, which is pretty darn cool. Yesterday, again, hearing from Beamer and some of the players as we kind of get into our normal routine of, Tuesdays and Wednesdays being those days where we have those availabilities, and hearing from them as we get into the start of the season. If you're waiting on an update for Rasul Faison, well, unfortunately, there is no update. He is dealing with a bit of a shoulder issue and was out of practice the other day, but that's the only news around him, so still don't know about that eligibility. However, you can buy a hashtag Free Soul t-shirt if you want to support the cause, I guess.
Yeah, that was something that I saw. I think Pete Nakos from On3 posted the link on his Twitter to that, so I thought that was pretty interesting. But yeah, and with Faison and the shoulder, which, it seems like just a little bruise from Saturday's scrimmage. But, again, he was not out practicing on Sunday. He was doing a little bit of rehab work. And then, he was out there yesterday in good spirits, according to Beamer. So I don't think there's anything to worry about from that standpoint. I think he'll be fine. But, obviously, the big thing is, he still hasn't been cleared yet. And, what'd you say earlier? 18 days? The time is ticking. And, the longer this wait continues, the less hope you have, honestly. And I mean, we're under 3 weeks from game day now, and I just don't know when the answer is going to come.
Here's my thing: if he gets deemed eligible, I'm not expecting it to happen in the next 18 days. I feel like it's going to happen on like October the 17th, right? Which, hey, that'll be great, and he can be a part of those final 4, 5, 6 games. However many's left at that point in time, but I feel like it's just gonna be something random, right? We're not even talking about it at that point, right? We're halfway through the season. We have the running backs that we have. We're not even thinking about the Faison eligibility, and then boom, on a random Tuesday or whatever, they'll say, "Oh, by the way, he's eligible," and we're like, "Oh, all right," and we'll go from there.
That's what's going to happen too. I think you're speaking it into existence because it'll be some random day when it's the last thing on your mind. It's like he hasn't been cleared, forget it. Like we're moving on, and then when you least expect it, the NCAA will, or maybe they'll just say no. Maybe they'll just be like, well, what's taking you this entire time to just give us an answer?
By the way, October 17th, that'll be the day before the Oklahoma game. So
that'd be perfect timing.
If I'm speaking it to existence, that'd probably be helpful because again, we expect that to be a pretty good defensive team. So if you can, have a little extra surprise, that they're not prepared for, hopefully that helps you.
Yeah. Now with Faison, with or without him, you do have to figure out, okay, what does the rest of your running back room look like? And,
sure.
You'll have a few guys in there, most notably Oscar Adaway, who we did speak to yesterday.
Yep.
Did talk a lot about his situation and what he's hoping to get. I mean, he's a seventh-year guy. Can you believe that there's a guy on this team that played in 2019? That's crazy.
So, and if Faison was eligible, I don't think you could find a combination of two running backs that's cumulative age is older than what Adaway and Faison's would be, because it'd be like 49 or 50.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think Oscar turns 25, I think, pretty soon here. I think maybe October, if I'm not mistaken.
And I think Faison's is coming up pretty soon as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, these guys are like, there's to put it into context, I'm only a few months older than these guys.
Sure.
And I've been out of college since 2022. So yeah. It's kind of crazy to think about how long these guys have been in school for.
So for me, because both these guys started college, now again, Adaway and Faison's stories are obviously different in how they've gotten to this point, but I graduated college in the spring of 2019, so literally months before they began their college career, and that was 6 years ago.
And again, COVID, redshirt, injuries.
In Faison's case, the junior college thing.
Yeah, in Faison's case, it's a whole wormhole of different things going on with that whole case, which is
Yeah.
probably why it's taking so long to get an answer. But nevertheless, these guys are very old, and it just makes you feel a little bit younger when you're just as old as these guys.
Well, one thing when you guys were talking to Oscar Adaway yesterday that we got some insight on that I don't think we were fully aware of was that he was not 100% in that Citrus Bowl last year, and here's what he had to say.
Nowhere near. It was one play, like literally the last drive. I'm sorry, I'm talking about this. I don't even like bringing up last year. It was the last drive, and like I had got it. It was like a good cut in the backfield, but then like I had to put my right foot in the ground to like cut off of it, and like it was like I didn't have a right leg. Like I was like, oh dang. Like I had to take medicine and everything just to like get out there and like be what I was. So yeah.
So in that game, 14 carries for 69 yards. Leading South Carolina that day, of course. Rocket Sanders did not play, and really that's the only or one of the few glimpses we got last year of him being the lead back for this team, and that's not a Illinois defense to sneeze at by any means, and he was able to hold his own and did it apparently not being 100%. So hopefully that is an indication of what we can expect out of him this upcoming season with 100% health to add on to it.
Yeah, this is something that we kind of knew about going back to the bowl game prep. And we knew that he was not 100% while he was getting ready for that game. And yeah, the fact that he did so well out there was a really good indication of, again, no Rocket Sanders in that game. And you really get a glimpse of what this guy can be for you. And it's a nice option to have if Faison is not cleared. So we'll see what happens with that. But I feel good about Oscar being the lead back if the season started today.
And again, the experience, you can't deny that. Again, he's been around the college football probably more than all the other running backs in this room combined. Like if you actually added up all their collective experience, I believe Oscar Adaway would have more than that in just terms of total years, if I'm thinking correctly.
Well, Bradley Dunn's been here for forever too.
I don't.
If you don't count him,
yeah,
then
I don't typically, and he's on scholarship now, so I guess we do have to consider him, but I don't quite loop him into that same group as the other guys because again, we don't expect Bradley Dunn to get a lot of run this upcoming season. He may play a little bit, but I'm not expecting him to be one of the main rotational guys.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I think when you look at the other guys they have in the room, though, you're probably going to need to depend on them a little bit. Again, Oscar, it can be your lead back, but let's just remember, last year he was the RB2 behind Rocket, and he's got RB1 experience from his time at North Texas. But you probably want, especially right out of the gate, you're probably going to split those carries up a little bit just to kind of get everyone, slowly, built up to where they're, able to take on as many carries as possible. You have Matthew Fuller and Jawarn Howell, two of the guys that were freshmen last year, both redshirted, and you're really hoping you could see more from them this year.
Yeah, no, ideally, not everybody has a rotation of 3 to 4 guys. They play every single week. So if you can kind of figure out in those first couple weeks of the season, you do have the SC State game in week number 2 where you should see a lot of those guys get a lot of carries if that game goes the way we expect it to go. But as you're kind of getting into the Missouri game, the Kentucky game, that's kind of when you're kind of figuring out okay, here's what our rotation of maybe 2, if not 3 guys looks like as we get into that stretch run of the tough part of the season where you start playing ranked teams.
Yeah, by the time you get, I would even say earlier, to be honest, like by like week 3, week 4, you really do want to figure out, okay, who's your lead guy? And if it's, again, let's just assume that Faison's not in the picture this year. Adaway, Howell, Fuller. I feel pretty good. Oh, Augustave too. I feel pretty good about those 3 guys, plus the Colorado transfer coming in. We'll see what he brings. I'm not really sure. I don't think we've seen him a ton at practice, but again, we'll see what comes of him as the year progresses.
Speaking of ranked teams, which teams were the toughest to figure out in terms of the AP poll that came out the other day? There's a discrepancy in high and low rankings for some of these teams that's pretty darn wide. We'll talk about that coming up next as the Extra Point rolls along. Tyler Head and Jack Beltry along with you on your Wednesday on the Game. Well, welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Belcher along with you here on your Wednesday on the Game. A reminder, a week from Friday, it is the Game Summer Golf Classic, sponsored by Kreger Showrooms, formerly the Nest down in the Vista. Again, that's going to be at Charwood Golf Club in West Columbia. Tee time's at 9. Registration will begin at 7:30 as always. We'll have the onion sausages out there again for breakfast. Mimosa bar provided by Saki's Wine and Spirits, as well as Firehouse Subs. For lunch, look forward to seeing you out there. We'll have prizes to give away, and the golf gun makes its return. So if you want to take part, it's only $400 for a team. Give Charwood a call at 803-755-2000. Press the number 2 to sign up. Again, 803-755-2000. And press the number 2 to sign up. We talked a lot about the AP poll this week, Jack. Again, Carolina coming in at number 13, which was maybe a little bit higher than what we expected. However, there was quite a discrepancy in terms of where the votes ended up for South Carolina and what their ultimate ranking was, because they were as high in some people's minds as 10th and as low as not being ranked at all. In fact, there were 7 people that did not rank South Carolina at all in their AP poll. That included Brett McMurphy, Reese Davis, people like that we've talked about earlier on this week. And for a team like South Carolina, that's not surprising. I think you look at Lenore Sellers and Dylan Stewart, they're doing a lot of heavy lifting in terms of the perception that people have of this team and what they're capable of. But as we talked about, if you took those 2 guys off the table, then with all the other questions, I imagine most people wouldn't have them in the top 25 at all.
No, like this team wouldn't be talked about at all. Like maybe a little bit considering they are coming off a 9-win season. But again, the perception is completely different. We talk about the chances of South Carolina going to the playoff this year and whatnot. A lot of that hinges on what Lenore Sellers does. Like he gives you a chance to win just about any game that he plays in. And if you don't have him out there, the team looks completely different. Like, not saying that, no disrespect to like Luke Doty or Aaron Noland or Cutter Woods, whoever it might be, but none of those guys, you put all of them together, I don't even think that would equal out to what Lenore Sellers does on the football field. And it's the same thing with Dylan Stewart. So, and the thing with defense is you're returning a few other guys on defense, so it's not like you're like quarterback's the one position where it's like that's what one single player can do.
Sure. A
defense, though, Dylan Stewart is one part of the defense in general. Yeah. So, but he's a big anchor of it.
Yeah, he is. And look, I think you have, when you look at teams in the offseason, especially now with how much turnover there is from year to year, you look at coach and you look at quarterback and you say, okay, is that coach somebody I can believe in? Is that quarterback somebody I can believe in? If you check both those boxes, you're probably going to end up pretty high in the rankings. And I think South Carolina satisfies both those requirements with Shane Beamer and Lenore Sellers against the other questions that we certainly have. But they weren't the biggest in terms of discrepancy from highest to potentially lowest rankings in the top 25. There were a couple of teams that superseded them in that regard. And we'll start off here with Florida, who is as high as number 6 in somebody's AP poll and as low as not being ranked. So you have a discrepancy of 19 or more spots. Again, if we're going to go not ranked, we'll just say that that's 26th, just to be generous there. But you have a discrepancy of over 19 spots at the very least for Florida. And again, you have a quarterback in DJ Lagway that people can believe in. Don't know where people fall in Billy Napier. It's kind of a 50-50 type of thing, but still some questions around them on that team in terms of talent they lost and, quite frankly, how healthy DJ Lagway is going to be this season.
Just kind of shocks me. Number 6. I mean, Florida has a good history, but like last year I think a lot of it is based on what they did towards the end of last year. They showed they can go out there and beat just about anyone. They beat LSU. They beat Ole Miss. They beat Florida State, which I know is not really saying much last year, but still, you go on a nice little run of 4 wins to end the season, and you're feeling good. So I think a lot of that has to do with how last year went. And you also have Lagway coming back, but again, the schedule it's just flipped this year. It's going to be still very tough. You got to play Miami in Coral Gables, mind you, and then you still have the same SEC schedule, which I think is going to be pretty tough this year. So I'm interested to see what Florida looks like, but definitely not a top 10 team in my opinion.
So John Wilner of the San Jose Mercury News was the one person to rank them number 6. And on collegepolltracker.com, when you look at people's individual rankings, they label things as extreme picks if there's a 5 or more spot discrepancy from where they actually were. And he's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 extreme picks in his rankings compared to what the AP poll actually was.
Now, yeah, well, yeah. I mean, it's with the extreme picks. Yeah, I mean, look, there's so much parity in college football to where it's just like you could really go a lot of different ways with who's going to be ranked, who's not. At the end of the day, it's something that's just going to change throughout the year. And the way we look at the rankings now, I'd be willing to bet it looks completely different by the time we get towards the end of the year.
So Florida's was not the most extreme. We have to go a little bit higher on the list to find Alabama, who came in at number 8 in the actual AP poll. They were as high as number 2 per Javon Edmonds and as low as number 23 with Kevin Carter. So a 21-spot difference for Alabama. And, again, they named their starter in Ty Simpson this week. That didn't exactly create a parade of celebration down the streets of Tuscaloosa as even people close to the program seem unsure of what exactly he's going to be. And I'd say the jury is still out on Kalen DeBoer as the head coach. Like, last year was okay by most program standards, but underwhelming by Alabama standards. And what does year 2 have in store?
Yeah, okay is not enough at Alabama. And I think the expectations always needed to be tempered with Kalen DeBoer when it came to him coming to Alabama, because that's an impossible job for anyone coming in with, there were so many coaches that were apparently, excuse me, a part of the interview process for Alabama that just decided not to take that job, right? Like you think of like Dan Lanning, like Dabo Sweeney, I'm sure, like guys like that, and you fall on Kalen DeBoer, the expectations were always going to be way too high at being the guy after Saban. And look, last year was not pretty. You lost a game to Oklahoma that was really ugly. You barely escaped South Carolina, like a lot of close games and some bad road losses on that schedule. So the jury definitely is still out, and I think expectations for this year have to be making a playoff appearance.
Well, and I think when you look at the fact that, again, Javon Edmonds was the one that ranked them number 2 and his highest. A lot of people had them in 3, 4, top 5 as well. By the way, Javon Edmonds of the Syracuse Post-Standard up in Syracuse, New York. I think they still benefit from kind of that Alabama discount, right? Where even in a year where there's a lot of turnover and a lot of difference, you just kind of assume they're going to be good. Now, I'll give them this. There is a lot of returning talent on defense, a lot of NFL caliber talent, and around Ty Simpson, you do have guys like Ryan Williams at wide receiver, obviously, Jeremy Bernard, those kind of guys that can help him out. So, look, I'm not saying they're going to be a bad team by any means, but that thought process of, okay, we don't know exactly how good they're going to be is a very valid point because, again, all these guys were on the team last year and they somehow missed the playoff.
The thing with Alabama, though, is, yeah, despite them not being – this is not the same, type of team. Like I know some of Saban's players are back for another year and whatnot, but I think from this standpoint, this year, I think there should be a better group compared to last season. Again, last year was not good enough by Alabama standards, losing 4 games, including the bowl game. And I think with this year's team, you have a really solid offense, I would say, with Ryan Williams, some other guys come back, like Jeremy Bernard's another big name, Jan Miller, guys like that. But also, like you said, the NFL caliber defense. Like, there's no reason to think this team shouldn't win 10 games and get into the playoff. I'd be very much shocked if, again, they have to handle their business on the road mainly. But if they are able to do that, you look at this team with 10 wins, they should be in the playoffs, no questions asked.
The team that has the more extreme discrepancy in terms of their rankings is none other than the Miami Hurricanes, who came in number 10 in the official AP poll, but have a high ranking as high as 4 and a low, once again, of being not ranked like Florida was. So that's a discrepancy of 21 or more in this. And much like a team like Florida, I can see a belief in Carson Beck, but A, he's coming off an injury. Don't know how good that's going to turn out. And B, last year just wasn't great for him at Georgia. And he made a lot of mistakes, a lot of dumb throws, those kind of things that ended up hurting Georgia in a lot of ways. And let's face it, Mario Cristobal's underachieved, right? He took the Miami job, for one, because his alma mater, and 2, he had the resources down there that he thought he was going to be able to be successful in a conference like the ACC. And he has yet to really achieve the heights that they thought was possible when they hired him. Game management's been poor, those kind of things that I can see a lot of people saying, well, I don't know how they're going to screw up, but they're going to screw something up this year and end up coming up short of what we thought that team should be.
And we talk about Miami losing Cam Ward. I think that's the obvious thing here, that you're losing a number 1 overall pick to the NFL. But I think the thing we also probably don't talk about enough is that they're losing their leading rusher, Damian Martinez, with over 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns. And then you're losing your top receiver with 1,100 yards and 11 touchdowns. So it's like you're losing so much production in that way from your top playmakers, not just Cam Ward. And so, yeah, you have Carson Beck coming in, and yeah, you're going to be able to replace those guys with transfers and high school recruits and stuff. But again, Mario Cristobal, like you mentioned, I think you're right. I think he has underperformed in his time at Miami, and I don't know what the expectations for them should be this year. You would imagine getting to the college football playoff, but it's gonna be tough with the schedule in some ways, just because you got Notre Dame right out of the gate. You have Florida. I mean, those could be 2 easy losses, and then you got to bank on going really well in ACC play, which you never know can happen. Any week you can have a slip up.
Yeah. So there's your teams in the AP poll that people can't exactly decide how good or bad that they might end up being. But in terms of the teams that did finish towards the top in the AP poll rankings, at least in the preseason, which ones do we think have the best chance of ending the season in those exact same spots? We'll discuss that coming up next. It is The Extra Point. It's our head and Jack Beltry along with you on your Wednesday on the Game. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Beltry along with you here on your Wednesday on the Game. Again, talking about the AP poll that came out on Monday, where South Carolina finds themselves number 13 in the preseason rankings. First time being ranked since 2009. And look, if South Carolina ended up number 13 again, that obviously would mean that they did miss the college football playoff. But I'm talking about 13 at the end of the regular season. When we're talking about playoff rankings, that would mean that they would miss the college football playoff once again, but probably still means they have a pretty successful year akin to what they had one year ago. And I don't know if they're going to finish 13th or not. I don't know if they're going to be in that same vicinity. Hopefully they're at least in the playoff conversation once again. But I do think it's interesting to look at like the preseason rankings last year as far as the AP poll goes and where teams ended up when the final rankings came out for the college football playoff. And looking at this, I don't think any team in the top 12 ended up in the exact same spot that they were at when the season came to an end. In fact, the majority of the teams in the top 12 in last year's preseason rankings, so Utah, Missouri, Florida State, Michigan, Ole Miss, Alabama, didn't even make the college football playoff at the end of the day. So when you look at this ranking that came out on Monday, yeah, I think we kind of look at a lot of teams we expect to be in contention for the college football playoff to be in there in that top 7 to 8. But if last year's any precedent, that could be wildly different by the time the season ends.
I look at the top 9 teams in the rankings right now. I'm going to be honest. I would be quite shocked if one or two of them was not in the playoff picture. I think all of them, honestly, should be in the playoff field in some capacity. Now, again, it's going to change based on the who wins the conference and stuff, and who the at-large bids are. But you look at Texas through LSU in the top 9, and yes, there are going to be a bunch of times where these teams are playing against each other throughout the regular season, so that might change things. But these are some of the best teams in the country right here that totally should be right in the playoff mix. Then you get to like 10, starting with Miami and Arizona State, Illinois, South Carolina, Michigan, teams like that. I think it's a little bit more up in the air if they're going to be getting into the playoff this year. But I think there probably won't be as much shakeup in the top 9, if I had to guess, by the time the season ends.
If you're looking at the rankings, and let's just go with that top 9, and I asked you to bet your life savings on one team that you can guarantee me is definitely, without question, going to make the college football playoff, which of those teams would you choose?
I would say Clemson. I would say Clemson. Again, not that their path is easy. They have to play Carolina, obviously. They got to play LSU to start the year. But, being in the ACC, they're the best team without question. If they beat Carolina and Clemson this year, they should be 12-0 and potentially ranked number 1 in the country. I mean, they are just a very all-around solid team. Klubnik's back. His top guys are back. You lose a running back in Phil Maffa, but, I mean, that's something you can go out there and replace for sure. Defense, expect them to be pretty good this year. I mean, if I had to bet, I know Gamecock fans probably don't like hearing that, but I think that is the one team for sure I can guarantee will probably have a pretty good year.
That's very fair. And again, they have the most experienced roster in terms of production coming back compared to anybody in the entire country. And I think I can make a similar case for a team like Penn State. And you lose a couple of really high-level talents in Tyler Warren and Abdul Carter, but they got a ton of talent coming back, including Drew Aller at quarterback, the two-headed monster they have in Singleton and Katron Allen at running back, a lot of guys on defense as well. And here's the thing. For as much as we clown James Franklin for not being able to get over the hump of beating the Oregons or the Ohio States or the Michigans in basically the past decade since he's been at Penn State, they are always a team that is in that 10-win window. And again, if the 12-team playoff had been around for the past decade, they would have made it just about every single year. So it almost seems like a guarantee they're going to find themselves somewhere within that top 12, maybe not winning a Big Ten championship, but somewhere in there to be good enough to make it into the playoff once again.
And the thing with them is I think they finally proved to themselves maybe in some way that, they finally got to the playoff. Yes, it came in the expanded era now, and they were able to win a playoff game. That probably does a lot of wonders in terms of confidence for guys like James Franklin and the guys that have been through the hardships at Penn State before. So I think that's really going to help them going into the season, kind of taking a little bit of that weight off their shoulder.
Listen, I've said this many times, and I'll say it again. If Penn State can't win a national championship this year under James Franklin with all the other teams that have questions at quarterback, I don't think they ever will. This seems like a perfect year if they're finally going to get over that hump. I'm not going to say it's going to happen, but if it was ever to happen, this seems like the perfect year to do it.
Yeah, it has to be, right? I mean, you're in the same conference as Ohio State, Oregon. Teams like that, Michigan's going to be better this year. But, I mean, Penn State, you have a really good quarterback coming back. This is a make-or-break year, I think, for Penn State in a lot of ways with what they have coming back.
So we'll see what happens. Again, a lot of football to be played between now and then, and we'll talk about this more coming up from noon to 3 as Jack joins me for the halftime show. That'll do it for hour number 1. The Extra Point coming up next in hour number 2. We'll talk some racing with Jen Jensen as your Wednesday rolls on here on The Game.
Everyone knows that AAA Heating and Air has the best HVAC replacement options in the Midlands with their guaranteed financing, no payments or interest for 12 months, and a 15-year parts and labor warranty. They're hard to beat when you need a new system, but did you know they also have great deals for repairs? That's right. If your system is broken and you're strapped for cash, AAA Heating and Air can still help. They'll get your repairs done with payment options for up to 12 months and no credit check required. So if you're the homeowner, all you need is a valid bank account. That's it. That's all you need. So don't wait. Call AAA Heating and Air today and get your comfort back on track. AAA Heating and Air. Comfort you can trust.
Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you here on your Wednesday morning. It is 10 o'clock on Wednesday. That's time for some racing conversation with Jen Jensen from the early game. Jen, when we sat here last Wednesday, I don't know if I said this specifically, but I think we could have probably easily predicted exactly what was going to happen at Watkins Glen over the weekend because it was another road course. And for the fourth race in a row, Shane Van Gisbergen goes out there, dominates, and picks up another victory when NASCAR turns left and right.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it just seems like it's a foregone conclusion that he is going to win on a road course. But, I mean, there are others who are very talented on road courses as well. Allmendinger does well. Mm-hmm. Chase Elliott does well. Kyle Larson has done well. But he just is so dominant that it just, like I said, it just seems like it's a no-brainer that he's just going to win all of them. And with getting that fourth win, he ends up getting the breaking the record for the most rookie wins in a season. Yep. So how incredible.
Yeah, so Carl Edwards had 3 wins back in 2005. I believe Tony Stewart had 3 wins back in 1999 as well. So it's definitely rarefied air. And it goes into specialization, right? We're kind of in this era I call of specialization where you have, 5-6 road courses every single year. You now have 6 super speedway races. With Atlanta, you have multiple short tracks and stuff like that, intermediates. So if you're good at one type of racetrack, then you're in a position with the way things are structured right now to put your team in the playoff and make a run for a championship. And that's exactly what SVG is doing. Now, he is coming along at these other type of tracks, but he's not fully there yet. And we'll get into how he might, perform in the playoffs coming up here in just a minute. But, I mean, I look at the race at the Roval coming up in October, and it's like, well, yeah, unless he has a mechanical problem or crashes out, he's probably going to win that one too.
Yeah. No, I mean, without question, because again, that's all he's done. So he grew up on that. And like I think I talked about last week, watching his footwork, it's so fascinating, the finesse that he has. And that's what he grew up on. He's just going to continue to dominate. And it's just going to raise the bar for the others. The others are going to have to really work at their craft.
And that's the thing, too, is, looking at a place like Chicago where he came in a couple years ago and won his first ever race, nobody there had seen the track before. It was brand new. Mm-hmm. It was obviously raining, and that's something he was very comfortable with. So I think we looked at that and said, okay, that's a track that nobody else had laps on, that, of course, he's going to have an advantage because the cars are so similar to what he was doing with V8 supercars. But now that you're seeing him dominate Sonoma, you're seeing him dominate Watkins Glen, it's like, okay, well, now nobody has an advantage over this guy at all because he has a 10th of the laps or 100th of the laps that some of these guys have at these places, and he's still going out there and kicking their butts, by 8-10 seconds at a time.
Yeah, no, it's incredible just the talent that he has and how he can just adapt a lot more quickly than the others can. And it's funny, I was speaking with Joey Logano yesterday and talking about different types of tracks, and he said, he favors short tracks. That's what he loves the best. But he said that's one thing he likes about this particular series is that they are integrating more of the short tracks, the intermediates, the road courses. And so everybody has to be a more well-rounded driver.
It's the most diverse racing series in the entire world. IndyCar runs street courses, road courses, and speedways, but they don't really run on short tracks anymore. Obviously, F1 is all road courses. Most other series around the world traditionally run road courses. Yep. NASCAR does everything. I mean, we were running dirt races a couple years ago. We're now going to an Air Force base to run another street course next year. We were racing inside of the LA Coliseum, for the Clash. Nothing is really out of the realm of possibility. And I think that's what's attracting world-class drivers like an SVG to want to come over here because, and again, we know what he's doing on road courses, and that speaks for itself. But if he can get to the point where he can start performing well at short tracks and intermediates and super speedways, this guy can become unstoppable.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I think he will, because I think he's a very talented, versatile driver, and I think it's only a matter of time that in another year or two, he is going to be a force.
I think it's interesting when you look at the current playoff picture, and this will change because at the end of the regular season in 2 weeks, where you finish in the top 10 in points will get you extra playoff points. So as of right now, William Byron leads the regular season standings, and if he wins that, he'll get an additional 15 playoff points, which will take him from 17 to 32. So when you kind of do the math, SVG is still looking right now to be the number 5 seed in the playoffs when it starts with his 22 playoff points via his 4 wins and obviously a couple of stage wins there as well. And that's where things get interesting here because, again, he's not the best when it comes to some of these other traditional type of ovals. But I look at that first round of Darlington, Gateway, and then Bristol. If he can just be okay at those places and not finish in the 30s, he's probably going to have enough playoff points to fall back on to advance in the second round. Or guess what? You have the Roval in there. He wins that thing, gets in the round of 8. Who knows what happens? Like, he could really be in position for a deep playoff run here.
I would agree with that. Yeah, if he can make it to the Roval, yeah, he has a really good shot of being deep in it and being competitive. And I need to really go back and look at how he has competed at like Las Vegas, Talladega, Martinsville, and just see, I wonder how he will perform and kind of project where he will land.
Yeah, and I got to imagine, and look, his teammate Ross Chastain's going to be in the playoffs as well by virtue of his win at Coke 600, and we'll see if Suarez can win a race in these next 2 weeks to get himself in. But you're going to pour as many resources as you can into both of those cars because they're giving you a shot at the championship. So whatever, potential help the 99 team could give to the 88 or the 1, I imagine they're going to get it, especially with Suarez going out the door at the end of the year to try and make the most of all these opportunities and playoff points that that SVG has racked up to this point.
Yeah, 100%. And what an exciting time for that team there is still a fairly young team. So for the successes that they're having, absolutely. It seems like the funding has been good. And I think the sky's the limit that they'll keep working together.
By the way, for reference, he did finish 20th at Darlington this year. Which that's solid.
Yeah.
That would be enough to probably get the job done. Did have a suspension issue at Bristol, and of course they've not run Gateway this year, so we don't quite know there. But if he can finish top 20 in those 3 races, and maybe grab a stage point here or there, then he might actually be in position to advance into that second round. Yeah,
that's actually fascinating info because I tell you what, you can, being so young in his oval career, to be able to do that well at Darlington alone, because that is a very tough track. So if he can be 20th or above, that's sitting well for him.
So with his dominance, once again, a lot of conversations come away this week about the future of road courses in the Cup Series. And look, I don't mind dominance. I lived through the Jimmy Johnson era in the late 2000s. Like, I've seen it much, much worse than SVG winning a couple of road courses in a row. But I think this is where people start to say, well, man, it's not as fun to watch anymore because this guy goes out and dominates. I do think there's also problems with the car that's not putting on. Like, if you watch Saturday's Xfinity race compared to Sunday's Cup Series race, there's a night and day difference in how entertaining they were and how the battles were throughout the field and those kind of things. This car doesn't race as well on road courses as the previous car did, and I think when you add that with the dominance of SVG, it is starting to feel very stale, right?
Yeah, it's almost like it's regressing back to the car tomorrow.
Yes.
Where it just seems like the racing package, it's just it's not as good, and I think that NASCAR does have somewhat of an issue, and we've talked about how on short tracks the engine isn't quite as good, so they're now thinking about getting some more horsepower and at least starting to have those conversations, and I think to really keep the fans happy as well as the drivers, because it's one thing, the fans aren't stupid, and they hear what the drivers say, but they can see it with their own eyes, that there are changes that are due.
Yeah, I mean, you look through, and it's different at road courses because a lot of people pit before the end of the stage, which mixes up the running order, but I'm kind of watching the rundown on the side of the screen through a lot of the race yesterday, and you just weren't seeing a lot of passes happen, and tires did matter, and when you had guys that would stay out, they would end up getting past pretty quickly. So that's good, at least, that you're not being able to stay out on old tires and hold everybody off. But when everybody's on equal stuff, when they're all going the same speeds, there's not that discrepancy in lap times. Yeah, you have a really tough time passing. And Watkins Glen being one of the more high-speed road courses that we have, that becomes an issue. And again, road courses were so good with the Gen 6 car, which is why we ended up having a lot more of them put on the schedule. And much like the short tracks, unfortunately, with the next-gen car, it's just not producing the same racing. And I hope the horsepower addition that's possibly coming next year helps. I can't guarantee that because it's only going to be pretty minimal, about 80 horsepower from what they're doing right now. Fingers crossed it works, but I don't know if this car has that capability of being as good as the prior one was.
And with there being talk that now there might be a 7th road course, you hope that they're going to try to figure something out, because it's like, okay, you don't want another track that's kind of laying an egg a little bit. But road courses do have such great potential to be such good racing, and just the limited passing opportunities, and they're very technical, and that has to be exciting for a driver, but it's exciting for people to watch. So I hope they kind of figure it out.
Well, excitement came in a different way on Saturday. The Xfinity race, which you want to talk about a road course merchant. The Xfinity Series has their own, and Connor Zilic, who I fully expect to be in the Cup Series next year as a teammate to SVG, and maybe he's the one person that can end this reign of terror that SVG has on the road as of right now. But he goes out there, wins at Watkins Glen for the second year in a row. You know, can remember following up his first win there, first career Xfinity Series win there a year ago, and seemed pretty par for the course. Did have to battle some adversity coming through the field and get back up to the front. But the real story came when he got out of the car in victory lane. And I don't know if it was him or somebody put the window net on the door. And as he's celebrating, he proceeds to slip. And I thought he landed on his head.
I did too.
Apparently, it was his shoulder that broke his fall. And Connor Zilic ends up with a broken collarbone and trending all over social media in the days since.
Yeah, that was terrible. And when you saw his leg, the way it sort of torqued, I thought, oh gosh, he's going to have a leg injury too.
Sure.
But yeah, it ended up, broken collarbone, and he did have surgery, had to have some plates and screws put in.
Yep.
And it was kind of funny because, again, he's trying to take it with a grain of salt and at least kind of laugh about it. Sometimes they'll put a band on somebody in the hospital, especially somebody who's older or has had anesthesia, and it was the fall risk band, and he's like, yeah, okay, that's about right. And so now that would be hysterical if that ended up on his car somewhere.
Sure.
But what a crazy thing to have happen. And again, talking with Logano yesterday, I said, so have you ever worried about that in the past? He said, well, not until now, but it's going to kind of be in everybody's brain, I think, moving forward.
The only other time I can recall that, Cole Custer won an Xfinity race a couple years ago and kind of slid off the door himself, but he saved it. It wasn't like he didn't land on his head or something, but that was definitely the nastiest one. I thought he was concussed or injured his neck or something along those lines.
Yeah.
And he kind of, like when you see a football player that has a head injury, they kind of lay on their side and it's that unintended body movement. That's kind of what it looked like. And I feared the worst on that, certainly. And they carried him off on the stretcher and all that kind of stuff. Fortunately, he's okay. We'll see how the collarbone heals. And again, Xfinity's off this week. They don't have to race next week until Daytona, but we'll kind of see what the plan is for him. Again, much like SVG, he's won a lot this year. He's got a lot of playoff points. He's got a good shot at this championship. Do you hold him out a couple weeks to make sure he's healed up for the 7 races in the playoffs, or do you try and get him back out there to accrue more playoff points? That's going to be an interesting debate. They got a little bit of time. Again, not until next week, but it's going to be interesting to see what JR Motorsports decides to do.
Yeah, and I have no idea what kind of recovery time they have for a collarbone injury, let alone now having surgery to even fasten it up a little bit tighter. So it'll be really interesting to see. But how fun for JR Motorsports to be going through this right now.
It continues a trend, though, because he is a Trackhouse driver. He's run some races with them and likely going to take over Suarez's seat next year.
Yep.
I don't know if you've been following this, but every single year over the past now 4 years, Trackhouse has had a viral moment. 2022, you had the Hail Melon. 2023, SVG wins at Chicago. 2024, Daniel Suarez wins 3 wide at Atlanta. Now this year, Connor Zilic has his fall that everybody was talking about. Every single year, one of their drivers does something that goes viral.
That's fascinating. No, I did not piece all that together, but there you go. What an exciting time.
Start thinking for 2026. Which Trackhouse driver is going to do something so huge it escapes the realm of NASCAR?
Well, we could really start having some fun with that.
You can. You start predicting because, again, it's a trend now. It happens every single year. I didn't foresee this being the thing this year, but there we go.
No, I can promise you, if I'm looking at a bingo card, that's not on it.
No,
like
not
somebody
at all.
falling in their celebration in victory lane.
I did think it was funny. SVG, when he got out in the victory lane on Sunday, just chose to step out of the door, not stand on it.
Right.
Like, hey, we're going to be safe here. We're not going to have falls 2 days in a row.
It is actually going to be really interesting to watch how people are in victory lane going forward because I think they're going to be a little more ginger.
Should be. Don't want to risk anything there. But excited for that. We're getting down to the nitty-gritty of the regular season. Richmond this weekend, next to last race in the regular season. And we'll close out the regular season in Daytona next week. And looking forward to seeing how these playoffs shape up here in a couple weeks.
Me too. Appreciate it.
So we'll talk to you next week. Appreciate it as always, Jen.
Thanks, sir.
It is the Extra Point. We'll dive back into what Coach Beamer had to say yesterday, including handling expectations of being the number 13 team. There's a couple things that I need to see out of this team to handle those expectations well. It's coming up next. It is the Extra Point. Tyler head along with you on your Wednesday on the game. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you here on your Wednesday on the Game. Another reminder, the Game Summer Golf Classic makes its return not this Friday, but next Friday. Sponsored by Krager Showrooms, formerly the Nest over in the Vista. That'll be August 22nd at Charwood Golf Club in West Columbia. Tee time's at 9. Registration begins at 7:30 as always. You can join us for onion sausages for breakfast, which are freaking delicious. I had a lot of those last year. We'll have the Mimosa Bar from Saki's Wine and Spirits, as well as Firehouse Subs for lunch. We'll have prizes to give away, and the golf gun makes its return. If you want to take part, it's only $400 for a team. Give Charwood a call at 803-755-2000. Press the number 2 to sign up. Again, 803-755-2000, and press the number 2 to sign up for the Games Summer Golf Classic, sponsored by Krager Showrooms. Coach Beamer speaking yesterday about a number of things. As expected, he was asked about the AP poll ranking, number 13 for South Carolina as they begin the year. Again, first time since 2014 that they do have the honor of having a number next to their name to begin the season. Obviously hope to fare better than that 2014 team did, which obviously ended up unranked pretty quickly thereafter, and obviously for the result of the season. But Coach Beamer discussed handling the expectations that come with being a team like the number 13 team in the country.
Yeah, I mean, I'd rather be ranked high and have those expectations than not. I mean, as a coach, when you're not ranked high like we were last year, it's great because you can use that as fuel and motivation. But we want to be a team that's consistently ranked high in the top 10, top 15 going into every single season because it means we did some good stuff the year before and we're expected to do stuff again. And the best teams in the country year in, year out, they're in those preseason rankings every year. But those teams and what we're continuing to convey to our guys, and we've been talking about it since the beginning, is all that matters is just what we do from this point forward. If you had a good season the year before and your quarterback returns, you're probably going to be ranked pretty high, and that's what we are. Now, do I think we're a good team? Heck yeah. And we also have a lot of work to do, but as you saw last year, there's a lot of teams that are every year. There's teams that are ranked in that preseason top 10, top 15 that won't be at the end of the season, and there's a lot of teams that aren't right now that will be at the end of the season as well. So just making sure that our guys understand every year is different, and we didn't really listen to it when everybody was telling us how terrible we were, maybe a little bit, but we don't need to be listening to it now when everybody's telling us how great we are, because you say, all right, we're ranked 13th, and we are, but I also know there's some prominent media members that put out their own little polls that we're not in their top 25. So we still got a lot to prove, and I know our players understand that and feel that too.
So Beamer gets it from what he said there. Like, he understands what it means to handle the expectations of being highly ranked and having to back up what was a historic type of season for you a year ago, and obviously the first time you were even in consideration for the college football playoff. And that's a very tough act to follow. And look, I don't know if Carolina's going to win 9 or 10 games and be on that playoff bubble once again. It'd be great if they were, and obviously be a lot of fun for us to talk about over the course of the next couple of months. But there's a lot of variables at play here that we're going to have to figure out as we get in the season on just how good this team can be. But here's a couple of things that I really want to see that I feel like help you handle those expectations. Again, it's not a guarantee that this is going to result in wins every single time, but things that I would like to see this team be consistent with that I feel like can help you hopefully back up what you did a year ago. Starting the season better is number one. This team, as we've talked about many times, for whatever reason, plays its best football at the end of the year. Month of November, it's been really good. You know, we're talking about storming fields and upsets and all those kind of things. That's great. But you also, to be a complete team, you have to be able to put it together early in the season as well. And for whatever reason, that first month of the year is tricky for South Carolina. Again, let's go back to week number 1 last year against Old Dominion, a team that I think went 6-6 or 7-6 the year prior, that we thought, hey, Carolina should be able to win this game by 2, 3, 4 scores, get some backups in, and have a comfortable start of the year. And it wasn't that at all. It was a nail biter. It ended up being a 4-point game all the way down to the very end. You escape with a win, but still, you did not start off the season on the best foot. And that's kind of been, unfortunately, a common thing here in the 4 years that Beamer's been here so far. In that first month of the year, so I'll loop in the years where August falls to the start of the season like this year, in August/September, Carolina under Coach Beamer is 10-8. So at least you have a winning record over that period of time, but still, you have a substantial amount of losses during that time. And this is something that really stuck out to me when I was digging through these numbers yesterday. You only have 2 Power 4 wins. So 2 years ago, you beat Mississippi State in that crazy back-and-forth game over at Willie B. And last year, you beat Kentucky. Those are the only 2 Power 4 teams that South Carolina has defeated in the first month of the season since Coach Beamer has been here. And I don't know if you've taken a look at the schedule as of late. You got 4 of those opponents in the first 5 weeks of the year this year. SC State's the only exception in week number 2. But you have Virginia Tech, you've got Vanderbilt, you've got Missouri, and you got Kentucky. And yes, none of those teams are ranked. We think Carolina is better than all those teams, but it's not a guarantee, right? And if you continue this trend of not playing your best football early in the season, a Vanderbilt can get you. A Missouri can get you. So I need to see this team come out of the gate a whole lot stronger this year, especially, week number 1 against Virginia Tech. I think everybody around the country is well aware that Virginia Tech is not in a great spot right now. That Brett Pry is one of those coaches that is, in fact, on the hot seat. And if you go out there and you're playing a 1-point game against them, then I think people start to look upon you unfavorably. Now, again, perception early in the season doesn't necessarily matter. At the end of the day, it's what you are doing over the course of the year and where you end up at the end of it. But I think you have an opportunity to really solidify yourself in people's minds, I feel like. And if you go out there and lay an egg and look bad against a team like Virginia Tech, then I think people start saying, oh, well, there goes Carolina reverting back to the norm of being an average to below average team. Once again, you have an opportunity to really change some perception here. And an opportunity, as we've talked about, to start off the season really, really strong. You've got a murderer's row when you get to October with all those ranked teams. Again, 6 of your last 7 games are against teams ranked in the AP poll top 25. And Coastal has the ability to be a really good G5 team, so you can't necessarily sleep on that game either at the end of the day, but you got to get off to a strong start. You have to find, at worst, a way to win 4 out of those first 5 games. I'll give you the one mulligan of losing 1 because, hey, that's tough no matter what, especially going to Como, but you can't get through those first 5 games with anything less than 3 wins to set yourself up for success on that gauntlet of a schedule you have there on the back end. Something else I need to see. Be competitive in every single game. I don't want to see an Ole Miss situation from a year ago, right? Where you're coming off a bye week and, hey, feeling pretty good. Yeah, you had lost the game to LSU, but, you were rightfully thought to be the team that should have won that game based on the bad call and Sellers being hurt. And then you come out there and just look dead against a team like Ole Miss, coming off of a bye week, nonetheless. I don't want to see that at all this year, right? Look, you're going to lose some games. Nobody's getting through this SEC slate undefeated. That's just the nature of how tough the conference is, and I don't expect South Carolina to be any different. You're going to trip a couple times this year. Don't do it in embarrassing fashion. Don't go out there and get drugged by, 4 touchdowns by anybody. Be competitive in every single game. Put yourselves in position to capitalize and win every single time. And again, not every game's going to go your way. You're going to have a loss or two almost guaranteed because of how deep and tough this conference is and how tough your schedule is, but don't go out there and get embarrassed. And finally, biggest one for me, establish an identity. Be consistent. People should know what you are when tuning into South Carolina football. Don't have this swings back and forth of 1 week your offense is good, 1 week your offense is bad. 1 week your defense is good, 1 week your defense is bad. I want to see consistency out of this team over the course of the entire year. And look, those aren't all guarantees, as I said, for you to be able to match or exceed the expectations you had from a year ago. But that's a good starting point. If you can start the season better, if you can be competitive every single game and have an established identity of what this team is, then you're on the right track, in my opinion, in my thoughts, my head, to following up what you did a year ago and hopefully having another strong year where you're at the very least in consideration for the college football playoff once again, if not maybe, just maybe, making your way into it this time. As we continue to talk about rankings, Brett McMurphy, yes, our favorite AP poll voter, has put out his list of the most overrated teams of the playoff era. And yes, South Carolina did make that list. We'll dive into that coming up next as the Extra Point rolls along. Tyler Head on your Wednesday here on The Game. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you here on your Wednesday on the game. We'll get back into rankings talk in just a moment, but it is time for Who Sprung a Leak, brought to you by our friends over at American Leak Detection. And throughout this year, I feel like the Atlanta Braves have been my most frequent flyer on this list. Now, I'm a Braves fan. I watch Braves baseball more than any other team in Major League, so I keep a closer eye on them than other teams. So when I see things pop up with them, it makes them an easy candidate to become a candidate for Who Sprung a Leak for Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And again, the Braves have given up this year, right? They're just trying to get to the end, finish line, look ahead 2026. So their struggles as of late are things that I feel like didn't even warrant being on here. But what happened last night up at Citi Field, taking on the Mets, I feel like was too good to pass up, because the Braves proceed to lose last night 13-5 as they dropped to 51-68 on the year. Again, that doesn't matter because they've folded and looked and are already looking ahead to next year at this point. But they did give up 6 home runs. Spencer Strider gives up 6 in 4 innings. Then Austin Cox comes in and gives up 3, or excuse me, Spencer Strider gave up 3 in 4 innings, and Austin Cox comes in middle relief and gives up 3 in 2 2/3 as well. And if you're ever watched a Mets game, like many teams, when they hit a home run, guess what? They shoot off fireworks. Well, the Mets hit so many home runs last night that Citi Field had to put the display on the screen that said, due to too many Met home runs, we have unfortunately run out of fireworks for the night. We apologize for the inconvenience. And if that's not a microcosm for how much of a struggle it's been for the Braves this year, especially from a pitching standpoint, I don't know what is. So there's your Who Sprung a Leak, brought to you by our friends over at American Leak Detection. Brett McMurphy has got a lot of conversation that has happened on this station here over the course of the past week, revolving around initially him not including South Carolina in his AP poll, which he publicly released last week ahead of the poll coming out on Monday. And again, a lot of people within his fan base not pleased about that, saying, hey, why don't you think South Carolina is good enough to be in your top 25? You read the angry email he got to Andy and Ari of On3 last week as well. And if you want to know the reason to be mad at him, here you go. He put out this yesterday on On3, where he's gone back since 2014, so in the playoff era of college football, and determined what teams are the most overrated and underrated in the AP poll. So he's looking at teams that started off the year ranked highly in the AP poll, or ranked in general, and either did not meet those expectations or ended up unranked at the end of the season. And he describes it as the way he came up with this was he assigned a point value depending on the difference in the preseason and final rankings, with bonus points for teams that started the year ranked and finished unranked. So if you started the year ranked pretty highly and finished unranked, that's going to cost you a lot of points in this metric and gives you the opportunity to finish on the top 25 list. South Carolina came in on this list 22nd. So in the past 11 years, he deems that South Carolina is the 22nd most overrated team in the playoff era. Now, as we've talked about already, Carolina's only been ranked in the preseason one time in those past 11 years. That was 2014, the first year of this, exercise that he's doing, where they were number 9 in the preseason poll and ended up that season obviously unranked. And until Monday, they had not been ranked in any other preseason AP poll since then. But the fact that they were a top 10 team that year, and this metric that he's using valued that so high that when they end up unranked, that accumulated however many of these points he assigns to them, and that put them number 22 on this list. So Brett McMurphy's not getting any Christmas cards from anybody locally here in Columbia. That is certainly the case. And again, these lists are fun to look at. What's the correlation? Who knows? Because again, there's so many variables and so many different changes for one program from years to years. Again, you're talking about 2 coaches ago now, South Carolina back in 2014 under Steve Spurrier. Then Muschamp comes in, and obviously now Beamer comes in. But it is interesting to look and to create some kind of metric to determine who might be the most overrated, who might be the most underrated. But Carolina does come in number 22 on this list. Let's go to the top of the list, though, because this is where things do get interesting, and I do think there's a bit of a correlation with who ended up on the top of this list and conversations that we seem to have on a year in, year out basis when it comes to college football. Southern Cal, the Trojans, number 1 on the list of most overrated teams since 2014. Now let's go back to the 2014 season and take a look at the preseason AP poll, they have been ranked inside, since 2014, inside the top 15, 6 different times. And for the AP final rankings, they've only ended up in the top 15 a total of twice during that time, including 6 different times they've been unranked in the postseason AP poll. So a history in the past decade or so of underachieving when it comes to Southern Cal. And famously, the other day, Southern Cal did not even get ranked in the preseason AP poll as Lincoln Riley enters year number 4 at the helm there at Southern Cal. And that falls in line with what the thought of that program has been for, I mean, really since Pete Carroll left, for being honest with you, where we always build them up, right? They always got, 4 and 5 star talent. They've got the resources and all this kind of stuff. They've got what you think is the right head coach, and they just consistently find a way to underachieve. Now, again, they've had good years mixed in there. They went 11-3 during Caleb Williams' Heisman Trophy year, and played for the Pac-12 championship, and ended up losing that Cotton Bowl to Tulane. They've been to a Rose Bowl with Clay Helton back in 2016. They've won the Big 12 the Pac-12 championship. But for a team of that standard, that caliber, to not even make the college football playoff a single time, definitely underachieving. To end the season unranked, definitely underachieving, especially in the Lincoln Riley era, where outside of his first year, they have not had a single season so far in the past 2 years where they ended the season ranked. They went 8-5 in 2023 and 7-6 a year ago. Now, I do think Lincoln Riley is making the necessarily changes to that program, specifically defensively, to potentially make them more competitive in a tough conference like the Big Ten. But it's a process. It's a slow process, and I don't know how patient the people out there in Los Angeles are going to be waiting for that to continue to happen. When you look at the rest of the top 5, Auburn, A&M, LSU, Wisconsin, again, all kind of backs up the conversations that we have every single year, where these are teams that we consistently think are going to be better, they actually end up being. Now, LSU in the past handful of years has certainly had more success than those other programs. They've won a national championship. They played for an SEC title back in 2022 as well under Brian Kelly. But particularly in the last couple of years, we always talk about LSU underachieving, right? Brian Kelly really surprised a lot of people by taking them to Atlanta and beating Alabama in the process back in 2022, but they've not yet lived up to the hype since then. Unexcusable losses a season ago, underachieving. This year, again, it seems like they've got all the tools with Garrett Nussmeier and all the talent they got returning at wide receiver and defense and all those kind of things. Caden Durham coming back at running back. We'll see what happens on the offensive line, but we just kind of naturally assume now, they're probably going to be a little worse than we thought they should be. Same thing with A&M. They're the team that perennially goes 8-4 every single year, and they'll always end up somewhere in the top 15 to top 10, it seems like, when it comes to preseason rankings. They always fail to live up to those expectations more often than not. And then Wisconsin, just kind of one of those teams that is always in the conversation in the Big Ten, but has not really broken through in these past handful of years, particularly in the playoff era, and really made themselves a serious college football playoff contender, and I don't expect that to change anytime soon. So there's Brett McMurphy's list of teams that he deems to be the most overrated when it comes to the college football playoff era in reference to the AP poll in both pre- and postseason. By the way, if you're wondering, the most underrated teams, BYU, Northwestern, Boise State, TCU, and Iowa. Teams that are lower valued in the preseason rankings end up higher when it's all said and done. And again, this was McMurphy's idea of coming up with these rankings, but I do think there's validity to particularly the top 5 of underrated team or of overrated teams when you talk about what we're always talking about in college football. These teams thought to be more successful than they actually are. Does Carolina deserve to be on that list? Probably not, because again, you're talking about one ranking, but I guess that ranking with his point system was valued so highly that it kept them on this list, even though they haven't been ranked in the past decade. So hopefully this year can spell them from being on that kind of list in future seasons to come, that you can back up, if not improve on, the 13th ranking in the AP preseason poll. One team that made its way onto the overrated list as well was the Oregon Ducks. And I don't know about you, but I feel like absolutely nobody is talking about the Ducks this offseason, and that shouldn't be the case. I'll talk about that to wrap up hour number 2 of the Extra Point coming up next. Tyler Head along with you on your Wednesday here on The Game. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. It's our head wrapping up hour number 2 here on your Wednesday on The Game. And another reminder, if you have not heard, starting Monday, The Game expands into Charleston on WIWF 96.9 HD3. So you'll be able to listen to us here in Columbia, as well as Florence, Myrtle Beach, and Charleston as well. We're pretty much like statewide at that point. You truly cannot escape the reach of 107.5 The Game. And even if you're not in the state, or even if you are in the state and you're just not near a radio, you can listen to us on the 107.5 The Game app, as well as streaming on the Game TV radio. As we talk about the AP poll, and last segment talked about Brett McMurphy's overrating and underrating teams of the past 11 years. There's one team that I looked at the other day and wondered, why aren't we talking more about them? That would be the team that is number 7 in the preseason AP poll, the Oregon Ducks. In case you forgot, Oregon went 13-0 last year through the Big Ten championship game. Its first year in the Big Ten, by the way, winning that conference, beat Ohio State in the regular season, and had the number 1 overall seed in the college football playoff. Now, yes, when they got into the playoff and matched up with Ohio State again, they got their doors blown off, and that game was over pretty much in the blink of an eye. But still, they were 13-0, won the Big Ten, and earned the number 1 overall seed. And for whatever reason, we're just not talking about them this upcoming year. Dan Lanning is one of those coaches that has gotten steadily better every single year. 10-3 in year number 1, 12-2 in year number 2, including playing for the Pac-12 championship, coming up short to Washington in that game. And then 13-1 last year with a Big Ten championship, and again, going undefeated in the regular season as well. Steadily getting better. And I get it. This is a team that lost a lot of talent from a year ago, including their quarterback and Dylan Gabriel. A lot of talent on defense, a couple receivers. Like, they're really having to do a 180 and flip over to a lot of new guys and new faces at respective spots, including Dante Moore at quarterback. And look, Dante Moore is somebody that was not the most successful in his prior time starting when he was at UCLA, playing for Chip Kelly back in 2023. You look at his numbers, and they're okay. Really had trouble completing, or had trouble with a good completion percentage, just over 50%, through a lot of interceptions. It wasn't great. But at the same time, he was not playing with the most high-caliber talent either at UCLA, so that certainly could have played a factor into why he struggled as much as he did. But Oregon's one of those programs, we talk about from a resource standpoint, they have everything, right? Phil Knight, I just imagine Phil Knight sitting back there writing check after check after check. Say, hey, Dan, what do you need? All right, check. No, what do you need? Check, 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 check. Making sure they have all the resources they need to be successful. And up to this point, they've done a really good job with that. Yes, they've not achieved the mountaintop of winning the college football playoff national championship, but it doesn't feel like a program that's all that far away, right? Now, I think Steve Sarkisian is the next head coach in line to potentially win himself a national championship that doesn't already have one as a head coach. Dan Lanning's not far down that list. You can debate, okay, between him and James Franklin, or even a Marcus Freeman, who might be next, but he's going to get his. If he stays at Oregon for the long haul, which I fully expect him to do that, he's not leaving this for any other job, I don't think, though the prior couple coaches did do that. I don't think Dan Lanning's going anywhere from Eugene, Oregon, and Autzen Stadium. He's eventually going to win a national championship. And I know the knock on the entire Oregon program forever has been that they've never won a national championship, and that's very true. They don't have any national championship in college football, not even one of those weird poll claims from the 1940s or something along those lines. But Dan Lanning has got that program on the track to become a team that can realistically do that in the next couple years. Remember, we wondered last year with them and Washington and Southern Cal and UCLA how those teams are going to fare going into the rough and tumble Big Ten. Because in the Pac-12, it was all offense, right, for the most part, outside of like Utah. Teams that just put up a lot of points, didn't play the best defense, and, struggled when they got to take on the powers of the other conferences. Oregon's not like that. Oregon's always been a solid defensive team under Dan Lanning, really good offensive team, and they took that in the Big Ten and won the conference championship in year number 1. Now, it's hard to replicate, it's hard to back up, but I fully expect them to be one of those teams, not only in the mix for the college ball playoff, but potentially being one of those teams that could take one of those coveted top 4 seeds and maybe have a bye again. We'll see, but it is weird. And again, I guess this is because of all the offseason turnover out there that just nobody's talking about Oregon. And I would say Dan Lanning loves that. Dan Lanning loves the fact that nobody's talking about this team. Everybody's focused on Texas and Ohio State and Georgia and Alabama and Notre Dame and all this kind of stuff. That's fine with Dan Lanning, because I feel like he's that kind of coach, much in the mold of Nick Saban or Kirby Smart that he worked under, both those guys. That he doesn't need the spotlight. He doesn't need the headlines. He wants to go out there and beat you on the field. And I think Oregon has a very good case or a chance this year to go out there and really be one of the better teams in college football once again. And by the way, in hindsight, being what it is, Ohio State was on a different level in that playoff run. It didn't matter who they were going to match up with in that Rose Bowl. They were probably going to run roughshod through that team as well. So I think as time has gone on, considering Ohio State won the entire thing, that loss in the Rose Bowl doesn't look as egregious as we thought at the time, because we didn't know Ohio State was capable of what they were capable of in terms of running the table and winning the national championship. But Oregon, team nobody's really talking about, so keep an eye on them, because, again, I expect them to be very, very good once again this upcoming season. That'll do it for the Extra Point. Coming up next, it is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs. I think Wes and Chris might be joining me. We'll piece it together as the hour goes along. That's coming up next here on your Wednesday on the Game. And welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head along with you here in studio. Wes and Chris handling some business today, but have enough availability to join us for the most important thing every single day. That, of course, being the trivia question as we get closer to kickoff. Only 18 days away. So both of them joining me now on the AAA Heating and Air phone lines. Guys, I'm just going to assume you're in parts unknown doing fun things, right?
Yes. Yeah, are we allowed to say where we are, Chris, or we just got to...
If you want to say, go ahead.
I'll leave that up to Chris Clark.
We are, yeah, I think we can give a teaser. That'd be kind of fun. We are right now in a perch that overlooks Williams-Brice Stadium. How about that?
So tells me you're doing something
special project.
Something special, something fun that I imagine we'll be seeing coming out here very soon.
Yeah, in the next few days. I think that's a safe assumption.
So keep your eyes open for that. I'm excited to see what that special business is that they are handling today. But got you guys for a couple minutes here. We'll talk a little bit about what Coach Beamer had to say when it came to the presser yesterday before I let you guys go. But we do have to kick things off, as always, with our trivia question. 18 days away from kickoff. Any guess on who I've selected as the 18-day trivia subject?
Is it Ortre Smith?
I actually did look at him, believe it or not.
You know who I pulled up? You know who I pulled up as my random blast from the past guest, Wes? Cedric Cooper. Remember Cedric Cooper?
Oh yeah.
That was an 18. Yeah. Actually, Tyler, I have no idea.
Wes, any guesses?
Nope. Tyler, I don't have a real guess, to be honest with you, man.
Okay, well, we're going to settle on Keenan Nelson Jr.
Oh, okay.
Keenan Nelson Jr., this is first answer gets it right. Keenan Nelson Jr. scored one touchdown at South Carolina. How did he do it?
Blocked punt against Vanderbilt.
What year?
2022.
That is, nope. 2023,
2023.
2023, the last time they had a special teams touchdown.
Oh, yeah. I goofed on that.
But
yeah.
I will give you the point, even though you got the year wrong. Wes, for a chance at a bonus point, both of you here, half point, who blocked the punt that Keenan Nelson Jr. returned for the touchdown?
This is wrong, but
I'm just
DQ Smith.
You gotta guess, Wes.
That was me. That was Wes.
You mean?
Oh, sorry.
That was Wes.
You guys sound similar on the phone.
Yeah, we're not in person, so no worries. I'm still mad about missing the year, because that was terrible. But thank you for giving me the point anyway. Who blocked the punt? Gosh, this is really going to bother me. At first, part of me thought that Keenan Nelson Jr. had actually blocked the punt and then ran it back, but I'm not sure if that's right. You know what? Let me just go with that. I don't think that's right, but I'll say Keenan blocked it as well.
That is correct. He blocked and returned the punt for a touchdown.
Okay, there we go. Trick question.
I think you should only give him half of that half point because of his lack of confidence in his answer.
So
that wasn't even a real answer.
So I'll give him I'll give him a fourth of a point.
Yes.
No, I'll be honest. I thought when you asked the question, I was like, I thought Keenan just blocked that punt. The part I'd actually forgotten was that he scored, that he was the one that scored. I thought he just blocked it, and so it got me all twisted up in my mind.
It was one of those classic cases of it quite literally bounced right into his hands. I mean, everything went the Gamecocks' way that day. It was an ugly, rainy game, and gosh, they almost blocked about two other punts against Vanderbilt earlier on in that game, but finally got one off in the fourth quarter, and we were able to give away some money from the Lawyer Lisa special teams contest. Last time we were able to do it. Hopefully that changes this year.
Yep, that was a special day in many ways, I guess. And I also still just remember Lenoris taking that ball to the house when he was supposed to just hand it off, which is kind of one of my favorite early 16 memories before he just decided to be Superman last year.
Yeah, well, one of the few moments we got to see in 23 of like, hey, this kid's gonna be pretty good. And obviously last year ended up, living up to the billing. Not sure how much longer you guys can hang on the line, but any thoughts, any takeaways from what Beamer had to say yesterday?
I mean, the biggest thing that stood out to me, guys, was we had heard, and we talked about this yesterday and had some reporting on Gamecock Central about it, that the operation of the offense was pretty smooth and more efficient in a relative sense than some of the other ones that we've heard about in past preseasons, past springs. And I think Beamer backed it up. The most interesting stat that I think was further evidence to that, he said Carolina ran 117 snaps during the scrimmage and didn't turn the football over. Now, there were a couple close ones, right? He said, hey, we had some passes broken up that our receivers were able to get their hands on. So it's not as if he said, hey, the ball is absolutely never in danger. But, right, the 117 snaps, of course, you could look at the flip side of that and say, oh, man, well, is that alarming that the defense didn't turn the ball over? I'm sure Clayton White and his staff said, hey, guys, we've been really good at this. Let's make sure we don't slip up. But it's got to be encouraging, I would say, for Beamer, for Mike Shula, for the offensive staff, for this team in general, to go through and have, a cleaner operation, as opposed to coming out and saying, man, we were really sloppy. We weren't holding on to the ball and we were running it. We were making bad decisions at quarterback. You like hearing, I think, that you took much better care of the football because, of course, that's a big point of emphasis this season, particularly cutting down the fumble numbers, right? And combine that with the amount of, we heard that the receivers caught the ball well, when it was thrown their way during the scrimmage this weekend. So I think overall pretty encouraging, and Beamer backed up some of that during his presser.
Well, I mean, guys, I think to that same point, when you look at from like a macro standpoint, most years this time of year, your defense can be ahead of the offense, and it just takes a lot of continuity for all 11 guys on offense to kind of get on the same page. And you look more from a micro standpoint at South Carolina, and you say, wow, they bring back a lot of guys on offense. And as we've talked about all offseason, they replace a lot of guys on defense. So I think the one thing you didn't want, and not that one scrimmage proves that, this is or isn't going to happen, but the one thing South Carolina does not want is for the offense to still be settling in those first few weeks, because it's just a big picture, typical offense thing. Even though you return a lot of guys, it's hard to get settled in. And then on the flip side, the defense isn't quite settled in because they got so many newcomers, and then neither side is really playing at a high level. We have talked about, hey, this might be a defense that needs the offense early on to kind of just take the bull by the horns, I guess. And we talked about the flip side of that last year. So I think that's a great sign when you return your quarterback, when you return a lot of those offensive weapons. You return a lot of guys on the offensive line as well, frankly, on top of adding in, a transfer or two who is going to help. And, I think for us to hear things like, hey, this is one of the most just efficient, smooth offensive scrimmages we've seen in a scrimmage one in quite some time, and then Beamer to back that up, I think that's a great sign. And, I'll be very curious to see. Beamer already talked about, hey, the defense, after a couple of drives, giving up some yardage, giving up maybe a score, they responded, and he loved seeing that. Will the defense respond going into week 2, scrimmage 2 here, on Saturday, or does the offense have another big day? But, guys, I think this offense is going to be much more than just sellers left, sellers right. Like, I do think they're going to prove that they have some weapons.
Yeah, it was certainly, I hope that's the case. And something I talked about a little bit earlier in the last hour is the vital importance of needing this team to get off to a much better start than they have in the past couple of years under Beamer. Look, they play their best football in late October and through the month of November, which is great. And obviously, you make a strong run towards the end of the season, and like last year, making your case for the college ball playoff. But especially this year, when you have 4 Power 4 opponents in those first 5 games for taking on that murderer's row of the final 7 games for the most part, mostly against ranked teams, you got to figure out a stronger way to come out of the gate. And again, there's going to be some growing pains and some figuring some things out with so many new guys and new faces and new places. But getting off to a stronger start is a must this year because you have such a challenge on the back end. You got to find a way to hopefully win 4, if not 5 of those first 5 games to set yourself up for those tougher games coming up in October and November.
Well, that's something, I mean, watching the Netflix special, that's something Shane Beamer mentioned, and he mentions it often. Our teams here have typically gotten better as the season goes along and played their best ball at the end of the season, which that's actually a great quality to have in a team, and I think he's generally right about that. But you also look back, like let's just say last season, it's the most recent example, it did take you a while, and there were some reasons for that, right? You had a quarterback who's uber talented but was in his first year starting, and things just you had some near misses, here at LSU versus LSU, and then on the road at Bama, where the 2 games, or just really one of them, just kept you out of the college football playoffs. So, yeah, can you get started a little faster? They're going to have to do that, though, and this is the key, in breaking in a lot of new guys or guys stepping up in roles on defense, and then, of course, on special teams as well. So I do agree with the premise, like, can you get off to a start while losing a lot of production, talent, experience, and leadership? That is a key question for this year.
And you play an opponent in week 1, frankly. I mean, no offense to Old Dominion, but this is a Virginia Tech team that, I think is probably going to be coming in with something to prove. They didn't have a great year last year. They went heavy in the portal. New OC, new DC. It's just it's a very different situation going into an NFL stadium in a game where, everybody's going to be watching because you're the only game at 3 o'clock on that Sunday, and you're playing another Power 4 opponent. So I don't think that Virginia Tech is some world beater, but I also think that's a game you've got to go in and play well. You have to protect the football. You can't give them the game. If you do, they will make you pay. And the thing that has stood out to me when you dive into VT, they lost a ton of close football games last year. Like, just about all their losses were tight games, which means, they didn't make the plays they needed to make to win. They've been just terrible in close games under Brent Pry. But that also tells you they have had the talent to compete in those games. So, South Carolina's definitely going to have to be ready.
Good stuff, guys. Appreciate you hanging on for a couple minutes till I get back to your super top secret mission, and we'll see y'all back in here tomorrow.
All right, Tyler. Have a good one, man.
We'll continue to preview South Carolina opponents. Josh McCuston of Soonerscoop.com joining me on the other side to discuss Oklahoma, the number 18 team in the preseason poll, as the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs rolls along on your Wednesday on the game.
All right, folks, let me tell you about our friends over at Integrated Media. The beautiful thing about it is you can take your dreams for that home, make it a smart home, dreams for your man cave, dreams for the living room, and they can take whatever you're thinking about and then just turn it into a reality. You can hit them up today, integratedmediainc.com, or give them a phone call. It is 803-948-8327. Their services include basically anything to do with your TV, your surround sound, your smart home services, or securities and cameras. If you work from home, for me, it was all about my home office. Didn't really have a great connection to the Wi-Fi. Needed hardwired internet, so they came in. They ran Ethernet throughout the home into my office, into my wife's office, and made sure we had a great connection there. And then we went a step further with whole home Wi-Fi. They can also hang TVs. They can hide the wires for you, and they can go all in on that man cave too. Hit them up today. Again, for more information, integratedmediainc.com.
Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler had along with you here on your Wednesday on the game. Having a little bit of trouble with the phones. We'll try and get Josh McCuston on here in just a second to talk about the Oklahoma Sooners as South Carolina will take them on coming up in the middle of the season. But we'll hit a couple of things with Coach Beamer here as we're talking about what he had to say in the presser yesterday. We'll start off with cut number 9 and talking about evaluating the kicking battle as we're waiting for the season to start.
No, it does. It's you do as much as you can. You try and make practice as loud and chaotic as you can. You can go in the stadium. You can go on the practice field. You try and put them in pressure situations. We had a deal today where it was a 2-minute drill at the end of practice, and we brought 2 kickers out to kick a game-winning field goal. And you just try and create as many different scenarios like that as possible, but still knowing, Lulu, whether it be the kicker or the receiver, it's just the defensive back that's playing in his first college game, or anyone. It's Lenoris. I mean, he's been in environments, but it's different when you go out there and you do it for real. But it's a challenge, and another reason that we should be able to have preseason games and exhibition games and all that against an opponent.
Coach, don't get me started when it comes to talking about preseason games. We could be here all day discussing that kind of thing here. I think it's ridiculous that college football is the one sport out of pretty much all of them that doesn't play any form of games before the season actually gets rolling. But it's something that we've talked about this entire offseason is that level of concern that you have when you're preparing or having something like a kicking battle and not truly knowing before you go into the season. Let's go back to last year with Alex Herrera. And I remember Beamer saying specifically in fall camp that there was some concern with the way things were going leading up into the season, but you don't truly know until you can get those actual game situations and see them kick. Again, you can simulate whatever you want in terms of trying to generate crowd noise, trying to generate this and trying to generate that, but until you're actually in there kicking against another team that's not familiar with you, and there's tens of thousands of people screaming, there's noise coming from all over the place, you truly don't know. And I'm quite frankly going to be on pins and needles with this kicking situation, Mason Love, whoever ends up winning the job there, until we see those things start going through the uprights. And really, it's seeing multiple times, right? And it's not just, okay, he made a 30-yarder against Virginia Tech, now I feel good about it. Like, no, I need to see some longer-range stuff, 40 to 50 yards, pressure situations against a team like, Missouri late in the game or something along those lines to have that full confidence in the kicking game. Because, again, South Carolina is one of those programs that's consistently always been really good when it comes to special teams in general, but particularly kicking the ball and all that kind of stuff. And last year, the numbers weren't terrible for Herrera, but in some of those bigger moments against LSU, against Alabama, just name a few, there were some key kicks missed there that could have gone a long way in terms of South Carolina potentially winning those games. So that's something that's going to continue on as we go through the fall camp or August camp, whatever we're going to call it, summer camp, getting set for the start of the season coming up here in a couple of weeks. And one question as well was asked yesterday is what exactly is Luke Doty's focus as of right now as camp rolls along?
No, he's a really good football player. So, yes, he's still the number 2 quarterback right now. And, yes, he's continuing to work in a lot of areas. He's working on all of our special teams, all of them meaning our 4 core, punt pressure, kickoff return. He's working on all those. He's working in the return game. He's just really smart. He's a talented guy, and he's improved as a quarterback. So, yes to all that.
So he's quite literally doing a little bit of everything. As we've talked about, it makes a lot of sense why Doty is your number 2 option as of right now, just because he has experience. And quite frankly, Cutter Woods and Aaron Noland do not. And if, God forbid, again, I'm knocking on wood, anything that I can find around me to not speak this into existence, but if something happened to Sellers, Doty is your best option, at least early on. Now, as the season goes along and we start to get opportunities for Cutter Woods and Aaron Noland to play, that can change. And I would say by the end of the season, that probably will change, just given the experience those guys will have up to that point. But in a pinch, you're going to want somebody that can go out there, handle whatever gets thrown at him, whatever the situation is, and know that he's been out there before. He knows what's going on. It's not somebody taking their first snap of college football where they're having to, go into a game against Virginia Tech where you're only leading by 3 points in the middle of the third quarter or something along those lines. And credit to Luke Doty, right? he's somebody that is so beloved around here, and rightfully so. He's somebody that has never strayed from Carolina. I'm sure he had ample opportunities if he wanted to go into the transfer portal, to go somewhere else, maybe drop down to a G5 school and become a starter. And he's always stayed committed here and has done whatever they need him to do, right? An athlete that you can put at quarterback, that you can put at wide receiver, that you can put as a possible punt returner, and he's done all those with a smile on his face, seemingly, because he loves South Carolina. And again, he's now back to kind of the original role of being a quarterback in terms of where they need him most as of right now. Again, the hope is you don't need him, and we'll see how that goes when the season gets here. But he's finally out of eligibility this year, but no doubt he's somebody that's going to be beloved for a long time here at Carolina for that willingness and ability to do whatever has been asked of him, no matter what that situation is. We also heard from some players yesterday. Casey Henry, of course, the right tackle for this team a year ago, talked about the chemistry and camaraderie with the offensive line and said it is, in fact, in his opinion, the most close-knit group they've had in his time here.
Yeah, I think that this is probably one of the closest groups that I've been around since I've been here, just because we talk so much, we hang out so much, we do so much with Lonnie and outside of the building, and it's a really good-natured, close-knit group of guys. I think the freshmen really bought in, and so did the transfers, to what we're about in the O-line room, and I think that helps with meshing, with cohesion and stuff. And I think that we played really well together so far, and I'm excited to see what we do this season. I think it's going to be fun.
Again, that's exactly the kind of stuff that you expect a player to say, right? They're not going to come out there and tell you about negative things that are happening or guys that aren't performing well or anything along those lines. But thinking about it yesterday and listening to Casey Henry talk, and look, we were very critical of Casey Henry because he had issues last year. Both the tackles, he and Josiah Thompson, had their share of problems as the season went along. But in retrospect, both those guys were in their first respective years as starters. Now, Casey Henry's been around the program a lot longer, dealt with injuries and all that kind of stuff. Josiah Thompson was a true freshman, so you gave him a little bit more of a pass. But I do wonder, now that he has a full season of starting under his belt, now he has an entire another offseason development, having known what to expect, playing every single week, how much better can Casey Henry be? Again, we kind of think the tackle spots are shored up for the most part. It's the interior when it comes to the guard spots that maybe still has a little bit of question mark, because it does seem like Boaz Stanley is going to be your starting center, which I think we're all good with, and he has the experience from Troy and all that kind of stuff. But I'm so intrigued to see how much better these tackles can be this upcoming year, because, again, that's a tough job, especially left tackle, because you're dealing with edge rushers and linebackers and all those guys that come flying around the end. You have to be more athletic, right? Quicker. And have to be able to move, have that lateral movement to protect your quarterback, which, again, was a struggle last year. But I'm so intrigued to see how both these guys are going to be this upcoming year, assuming they're both the starters. Again, we don't have a solidified, rotation for the front five as of right now, but it seems to be those two guys are your leading candidates for their respective starting spots. And Josiah Thompson seems like almost a done deal when it comes to left tackle, though, again, we don't have a depth chart. Don't put the cart before the horse here, but I'm expecting those two guys to be your respective tackle spots, and again, hoping they make significant strides from where they were, this time 1 year ago. I'll once again try and effort Josh McCuston of Soonerscoop.com coming up next as we hit the break and see if we can get some insight into the Oklahoma Sooners ahead of their game here in Columbia coming up in mid-October. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head along with you on your Wednesday on the Game.
Our friends over at Game Day Men's Health can help you as a man reclaim your vitality by optimizing hormone levels. They specialize in TRT, or testosterone replacement therapy, which will help boost your energy and strength. And they're a lot different than other clinics that do similar things. They have in-house labs that can deliver your results in just 15 minutes. They're conveniently located in Northeast Columbia near I-77 and Two Notch Road. Comfortable man cave style clinics with TVs and refreshments while you wait. Also great, they don't use any long-term contracts. Flexible plans tailored to your needs. TRT tests available to check your levels with absolutely no obligation, and then ongoing monitoring. Committed to your success with expert guidance. You can get started by going to gamedaymenshealth.com/north-columbia. Again, located just off I-77, or give them a call, 803-265-3161.
Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head along with you here on your Wednesday on the game. I have efforted Josh McCuston of Soonerscoop.com multiple times. Phone's not going through, so we'll try and get him on a little bit later on this week, as I do want to talk about the Oklahoma Sooners. They're one of the most intriguing teams in all of college football this year, and my goodness, they need to be, because Brent Venables' job is certainly on the line this year. If they don't go out there and have success, they're going to be looking for another coach out there in Norman. So again, we'll try and get Josh on at some point later on this week. I do want to remind you, as I've said multiple times, the Game Summer Golf Classic, sponsored by Krager Showrooms, formerly of the Nest in the Vista, is coming up a week from Friday on August 22nd at Charwood Golf Club in West Columbia. Tee time is always at 9 o'clock. Registration begins that morning at 7:30. We're going to have those onion sausages for breakfast, which are freaking delicious. If you've not had them before, I had many of them last year, too many to count. We're going to have a mimosa bar from Saki's Wine and Spirits, as well as lunch provided by Firehouse Subs. We'll have prizes to give away, as well as the golf gun makes its return. We hope to see you out there. If you want to take part, give Charwood a call at 803-755-2000 and press the number 2 to sign up. It's only $400 per team to participate. Again, 803-755-2000 and press the number 2 to sign up. So while we aren't going to get to talk about Oklahoma today, did want to talk about this. Pete Nakos of On3 put out his list the other day of the 10 most valuable non-quarterbacks in college football. And in today's day of the sport, where we have so much, movement with transfer portals and all that kind of stuff, we tend to focus in terms of off-season conversations on the quarterbacks because that's the most important position on the field, duh. And that can tell you about as much as possible about a team, right? Lenore Sellers is back this year for South Carolina. Quite frankly, I think that's the reason why they're ranked inside the top 25. Because if you took the rest of this roster, removed Lenore Sellers from it, and said, hey, Aaron Nolan or Cutter Woods is your starting quarterback this year, I don't think anybody's ranking him in the top 25 because the talent of Lenore Sellers is very hard to replicate and replace from what he did a year ago. So I think that's doing a lot of the heavy lifting as to why South Carolina is in the top 25, at least to start the season. Another player that is a big factor in that is, of course, Dylan Stewart on the defensive side of the football. Now, he wouldn't carry all that load in terms of he being the sole reason why Carolina would be in the top 25, but he certainly helps out that cause a lot because you do have a potentially dominant game-wrecking player on the defensive side of the football. And to no surprise, he ends up pretty high on Pete Nakos' list when it comes to most significant non-quarterbacks. He's actually number 2 on this list behind Jeremiah Smith. And again, the numbers speak for themselves. What he did as a true freshman didn't, break Clowney's sack record, but he's somebody that, if he stays healthy and continues to perform at the clip that he did a year ago, has the potential to be in that Clowney conversation when his career at South Carolina is done, probably as soon as the end of the 2026 season, where he could go on and maybe be a number 1 overall pick or something along those lines. And it's a rightful spot on this list. And when you look at the talent that he listed on this list of most valuable non-quarterbacks, it's a who's who. You have Jeremiah Smith at 1, Dylan Stewart at number 2, Caleb Downs, safety at Ohio State at number 3, Colin Simmons of Texas at 4, Ryan Williams, hey, by the way, he's 18 now, not 17, so we can stop saying that, at number 5, Leonard Moore from Notre Dame at number 6, Jeremiah Love of Notre Dame at number 7, Peter Woods of Clemson at number 8, Spencer Fano of Utah at number 9, and Jordan Tyson of Arizona State at number 10. All great players, all deserving of being on this list. But I think Dylan Stewart might be the most valuable out of all these in terms of what he means to his individual team. Follow me on this. Jeremiah Smith, without a doubt, probably the most talented player in all of college football, right? We watched what he did a year ago, especially in that playoff run. Dude was otherworldly. In fact, I'm surprised he is not number 1 overall in Heisman odds because I think he's got a very good shot of having a Devontae Smith type of year from Alabama in 2020 and just running away with the Heisman race. He's that good. I mean, we were talking about a year ago, why does this guy even have to play college football for 2 more years? He could go out and be a top 10 pick in the NFL draft right now, and he's only going to get better as time goes along. But I look at the roster of Ohio State, and I think even if Jeremiah Smith was not playing for them, that team still has the ability to go really far, really deep. You got another solid receiver in Carnell Tate there that is a good other option. So it's not like their wide receiver room is completely devoid of talent when you talk about Ohio State. Same thing with Caleb Downs at number 3. Again, legitimately one of the best defensive players in all of college football, particularly at that safety spot. But they have a lot of other pieces on defense as well. Like, Ohio State could still be pretty darn successful if Jeremiah Smith and Caleb Downs did not play. And again, they're still trying to figure out the quarterback situation there. But even then, they're still going to be good. They're going to be a team that's going to be in the mix for the playoff and maybe have another shot at a national championship this upcoming year. Texas with Colin Simmons at number 4, the same thing. If you remove him, yeah, he's a dominant defensive player, but they have a lot of things around him that are going to be successful and productive. Same thing with Ryan Williams at number 10. I can keep going on down this list, but you see the trend that I'm following here All these other teams have a lot of sure things around these guys that, again, as valuable as they are, you could remove them, and I still think those teams would be really, really good. But if, again, we're talking about valuable non-quarterbacks here, you take Dylan Stewart off the defense, my opinion of it changes drastically. I think a lot of people's opinions of it change drastically because he is the guy. He is the focal point of that defense, the one that everybody is going to be game planning for and scouting for at the top of the list every single week. In fact, he was that for a lot of last year. He was kind of 1A, 1B with him and him and Kyle Kennard. Of course, when you have good pass rush off both sides, it's kind of pick your poison, right? Okay, we can either double this guy and let the other guy eat or double this guy and let the other guy eat. So that was obviously successful for South Carolina a season to go. But given the questions we have on this defense with the interior of the defensive line, the other edge spot, like we think it's going to be Brian Thomas Jr. because he had a very solid year last year, kind of as that third guy behind both Dylan Stewart and Kyle Kennard, but we don't know that for sure. We have to see him in this expanded role to know how that's going to happen. Linebacker, you're replacing all of your linebackers from a year ago in the middle of that defense. How's that going to go? We have high hopes for J.R. Johnson. We have high hopes for Justin O, high hopes for Sean Murphy, but we truly don't know until we see it on display. Secondary's, I'd say, solid, right? You got Judge Collier, Brandon Cecil, who we expect to play that other corner spot. You've got a very solid group when it comes to safety, DQ Smith, Peyton Williams, we assume, kind of taking that other main safety role, and then Jalen Kilgore playing the nickel spot. I don't know if anybody would say that's the best defensive back unit in the entire country, but it's solid nonetheless. But again, if you remove Dylan Stewart from this defense, I think the thoughts and ability of what they can do changes. Because again, he's a game wrecker, and that's a rare thing. You can have good edge rushers that aren't dominant, right? Dylan Stewart is a dominant type of guy. And again, somebody that everybody is going to be circling when they plan for South Carolina this upcoming season. And again, given the questions around him, not only on defense, but elsewhere on offense around Lenore Sellers, I think just given the fact that he plays such a vital and important role in what this team can be, I would say he's perhaps the most important to his team of the most valued non-quarterbacks that Pete Nakos put on this list. Because again, if you remove him, if he got hurt or something like that, which again, I'm knocking on wood, hoping that doesn't happen, same thing with Lenore Sellers, then the opinion of this defense drops significantly. Because again, we're trying to figure out who the other edge rusher on the other side of him is going to be. And then if you didn't have him, it's like, okay, well now what do we do? Right? So I'm expecting a really, really strong sophomore season from him. It's going to be interesting, though. I was listening to Andy and Ari and Pete Nakos of On3 yesterday on their podcast, and they did bring up a good point. They were talking about this list, and Staples brought up, like when Clowney went into his final year, where, again, people thought, man, this guy could just sit out the season and still go on to be the number one pick. But everybody game planned away from him, right? The game plan of running was like, hey, let's run to the opposite side of wherever he lines up. Let's throw the opposite side of wherever he lines up. Let's try and get the ball out quick so Jadeveon Clowney can't go out there and wreak havoc like he had done in seasons before. That's probably going to be a lot of the game plan here for playing against South Carolina because Stewart is that guy. Stewart is that monster on one side of the line of scrimmage that if you let him run free or if you're not doubling him, he's probably going to make you pay for it. So, yeah, let's run to the other side, especially if you can't get a consistent pass rush from the other end from a Brian Thomas, JT Gear, Desu, whoever, insert whatever name you want in there, then it's going to be very one-sided in terms of how these other offenses run and focusing as much as they can on Dylan Stewart to prevent him from going out there and making you pay. So, again, I don't disagree with the personnel that's on this list from Pete Nakos, but I think you can make a very strong argument that of all these guys, nobody is more important to their team's overall success than Dylan Stewart. And again, we hope he has a phenomenal year this year, gets into the double-digit sacks. Maybe he wins the Nagurski Award that Kyle Kennard won a season ago, and that helps South Carolina go out there and have the success that we certainly think and hope they're capable of this upcoming season. We'll come back. We'll wrap up the hour. Coach Beamer talking about a lot of things yesterday, including not being asked to be a part of Outer Banks despite the Netflix series last week. We'll dive into that and what show Coach Beamer might actually fit in the best on. As we wrap up the hour, it is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head along with you on your Wednesday here on The Game.
If you're out there looking for a local, reliable HVAC service for your home or your business in the Midlands, reach out to our friends over at Krantz Cooling and Heating. KrantzCooling.com, Krantz, cooling with a K, KrantzCooling.com, or give Justin Krantz, the general manager over there, and his team a call, 803-755-0793. I've had Krantz Cooling out to my home several times. They did a mini split for me in the garage. They've checked out all the other units at my house to make sure they're running in tip-top shape. Love my experience so much that when my mom moved to Irmo, I got them to go out to her home, too. They put in 2 mini splits for her. They handle all her HVAC needs as well. They could do the same for you. KrantzCooling.com or 803-755-0793. Since 1983, Krantz Cooling, their team has been providing great service to business owners and families in the Midlands. They can do the same for you.
Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head along with you here on your Wednesday on the game. If I haven't mentioned this hour, I'll remind you once again, starting Monday, August 18th, we'll be expanding into Charleston on WIWF 96.9 HD3. So you'll be able to listen to us here in Columbia, be able to listen to us in Florence, as well as Charleston and Myrtle Beach as well. So looking forward to expanding even farther across the state. That'll be 100.3, of course, 107.5 here in the game in Columbia, 100.5 in Florence, 100.3 in Myrtle Beach, as well as 96.9 out there in Florence, as we'll truly be statewide at that point. And again, you can always listen to us on the 107.5 The Game app, as well as streaming on the Game TV radio on YouTube as well. Yesterday, Coach Beamer talked about a lot of non-football related things in his presser. Of course, came to the defense of his wife's cookies, which apparently were the subject of a lot of criticism for their involvement in one of the episodes of the Netflix series last week. For Any Given Saturday that South Carolina was featured on, and came to bat for her on those, as well as he was asked the question because he's made reference to his love for the show Outer Banks and thought maybe, hey, if I'm on the Netflix series, maybe I'll get that shot at being on the show in a cameo fashion. And, unfortunately, Coach Beamer said that has still not come to fruition as of yet.
They have not. And it bothers me, too. I was at Kiowa did I tell you all the story? I was at Kiowa 2 weeks ago, right before we started practice, and it was like an evening, and they filmed some of the episodes on the ocean course there at Kiowa. And there was a night I was driving back from dinner with my kids. I think Emily wasn't there, and I had taken the kids to eat. And we were driving back, and I passed a bus. I saw the bus coming in that morning. I was going to play golf, and normally you don't see charter buses coming on to Kiowa Island. So I'm thinking, maybe it's a golf group or something going out to the ocean course. But then later that evening, 12 hours later, I saw the same bus leaving, and then it hit me. I'm like, wait a minute, could that be cast or extras that they brought out on a bus? And then right after the bus, I passed all these trucks, Jordan, that said wardrobe and different things like that. I'm like, hold up. Am I here at Outer Banks is filming like a half mile from where I'm standing and they didn't call me? So no, I have not, but I'm getting closer if I was on the island when they're filming it as well. Because I do know they were filming this summer. I saw that.
Maybe one more season, the Netflix people will come around.
Maybe. Win some more games.
803-404-6100, Firehouse Subs text line. What show, TV show, whatever, can be on Netflix, can be on regular TV, what show do you feel like Coach Beamer fits in the best, right? Because he's obviously a really big fan of Outer Banks, but like Outer Banks is a drama, it's very serious. I think Beamer's best quality is his ability to have fun, to embrace kind of the goofy, entertaining side of things. And I don't know if you can necessarily do that on a show like Outer Banks. As badly as he wants to be on the show, I feel like he might have a better fit somewhere else. So again, 803-404-6100, Firehouse Subs text line. Let me know what show you think Coach Beamer would fit in best when it comes to a cameo appearance. And I don't know. I hope by virtue of his relationship with Netflix now with SEC Any Given Saturday, I'm assuming there's another season coming up next year. Maybe finally he can get that much desired cameo on Outer Banks. A lot of you weighing in here. Archer on Netflix. Okay, not something that I've checked out. Is that serious too? Is that Archer from the FX series from back in the day? Is that the same thing? Because that's kind of the it's the animated one that is kind of like it's goofy serious, right? Like it's trying to be serious, but it's also kind of funny at the same time. I did watch a little bit of that back in the day when it was on FX. If that's the same thing that you're talking about. Let's see. Nameless texter Corbin, says Beamer on Shrinking, Apple TV show that's just incredible. I've not checked that out. I need to get Apple TV. I need to watch Severance. Everybody talks about Severance. Dave talks about it all the time, but maybe Beamer could fit in well in there. By the way, Miami guy who did say yes, that is the same Archer from FX back in the day. I could see that, like a cameo voice role. I'm not sure what character he would play on that, but I feel like Beamer might fit in perfectly there as well. Nameless Texter says Friday Night Lights reboot. Now, again, being a football coach, that's natural, right? Like, remember Mike Leach was on Friday Night Lights back in the day on that gas station scene or whatever. I feel like that's something where you can kind of do a little bit of both. You can be serious, but also be yourself. I don't know if that's Coach Beamer making a cameo appearance as, hey, look, it's Coach Beamer from the University of South Carolina giving somebody on that team a scholarship offer or an in-home visit or something along those lines. But I could see that because, again, you can be yourself, or if you are playing a character, you're playing football coach, right? And you can be whatever kind of football coach you choose to be. Same thing with, like, I don't know if you've checked out the new King of the Hill reboot that's on Hulu. Like, King of the Hill is by far my favorite animated adult sitcom out of all of them. Family Guy, American Dad, Futurama. King of the Hill is number one for me. And I've been watching the reboot that came out last week, I guess, as well. And again, it's a modern adaptation of the show from the 90s into the 2000s. And I don't know if Beamer would play himself on that in like a cameo role, if he could just play another character. But the wacky and zaniness of that show, especially with the people that live in Arlen, I feel like Beamer could find some kind of niche of fitting into one of those roles that I think he'd be really good at. Because again, he likes to have fun, right? And in any kind of exposure like that is a positive for the University of South Carolina, because again, it's getting your face, it's getting your program's name out there more and more and more and more. And I don't know, again, I think Beamer's got a good enough personality that he could fit in on a lot of these different types of shows. And again, Netflix, if you're listening, this man would like to be on Outer Banks, and let's see if we can possibly make that happen. But I do think that's kind of funny that, again, he was in the area that they were apparently filming the other week and unfortunately not asked to be a part of the show. So appreciate y'all weighing in on the Firehouse Subs text line, 803-404-6100. We'll get back into what Coach Beamer had to say yesterday at the presser in terms of handling expectations and everything coming away from the scrimmages and scrimmage number one in practice over the past couple days, as well as we jump into the halftime show. Jack Beltry going to join me once again on the other side as we navigate things from 12 until 3 as you make your way through your Wednesday, all right here on 107.5 The Game. And I'm assuming Wes and Chris can be back in studio tomorrow for a normal edition of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs here on your Wednesday on The Game.
All right, everyone, 11:15 here on the game, which means it's right at lunchtime. So if you are hungry, like I am, check out our friends over at Firehouse Subs. 15 locations all around the Midlands and growing as always. Shout out to our guy, Larry Chandler, owner and operator of all 15 Midlands Firehouse Subs locations. No matter where you are in the area, they can hook you up. Lunch, dinner, catering, all those options are available. Check out their great menu and their new limited time offering, which is the Smokin' Triple Stack. You can get it traditional sauce or the Carolina Gold, both delicious. You may need a fork. That's okay. No worries, no judgment on the mess. FirehouseSubs.com or download the Firehouse Subs app. That's my favorite method. That's our favorite method around here. Earn yourself some rewards, points towards future Firehouse Subs purchases, and you can use the Rapid Rescue to go. So your sub is waiting on you wherever you are in the Midlands. FirehouseSubs.com.